last name? John Aguilera. I mean, John Franklin. You want to do the pledge today? Okay. Okay. Welcome, everybody. We're going to open our meeting, and I'll call our meeting to order. Thank you for all coming. I see a lot of students out there from Rancho. Must be how many students? Oh, just a couple. Just a few during your civic duty. Well, it'll be an interesting meeting tonight, so we're glad to have you here. Roll call by our Assistant City Clerk, Amanda Lee.
Let the record reflect all members are present.
Our Pledge of Allegiance tonight will be led by John Franklin, council member, and please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our invocation tonight will be Alyssa Davey, founder of the Garden of Innocence National.
Please bow your heads. Lord, give us a quiet mind and teach us to trust in Thee, that knowing all things are in Thy hands. Guide us in following the needs of our community and quiet our minds that we may hear what our citizens want us to hear. Help us to be good custodians of Vista and choose the right path that creates a better town to live in. Guide our minds that we might come up with a good plan to benefit all the people of Vista and make them proud of our town and their choice in choosing us. Quiet the hearts of those here tonight so that they may speak their minds and help us to understand and make the right decision. Bless this town and everyone that abides here. Amen.
Thank you, Alyssa. And thank you for what you do in the Garden of Innocence. We appreciate that. In accordance with the Brown Act, I'd like to announce that as a result of convening simultaneous meetings, the members of the Buena Sanitation District will receive compensation of $147.75 for the district meeting pursuant to the Buena Sanitation District Ordinance 2006-1. The next thing on the agenda is the approval of our agenda by our City Manager, Patrick Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. There are no changes to the agenda this evening.
There was no closed session scheduled this evening, so we don't have any information on that. But we do have a presentation now by Jim Hammerly. He's the Dean of the College of Business Administration for California State University, San Marcos. Welcome, Mr. Hammerly.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, thank you for giving me a chance to introduce myself. My name is Jim Hammerly. I'm the newly appointed permanent dean of the College of Business at Cal State San Marcos. I want to just real quickly update you on progress on our campus. As some of you may know, we've exceeded 14,000 students this year on campus, very active, growing campus, dynamic. In the College of Business, we have roughly 2,650 students, including MBA students and undergraduates alike. About 250 of our students, or 1 out of 10, is an active duty or retired military, and we're very proud of that. We're a very fast-growing campus. We've been building new buildings, a new building every year for the last 10 years. We just recently completed a major new university student union. If you haven't seen it, it's gorgeous. We're in the process of completing a sports center, filing for NCAA Division II, so you'll see a lot of sports activity on our campus as well. We like to think that we serve our immediate region in terms of education at the post-secondary level. 85% of our students that graduate stay within North County, so we like to think that we train your future employees. There are two major initiatives that I am taking charge of. The first is market-driven initiatives in our college, which is really to respond to community requests and business requests for educational initiatives. So those are things like our accelerated MBA program, which has specializations in areas such as hospitality and tourism, business intelligence, big data. We have a new program, a Master's of Science in Cybersecurity, the first in its nation. We have a new water certificate program. All of these programs are developed in conjunction with community and business partners. So you take the water certificate program, all of the regional water districts are contributors to that effort, contribute to the curriculum, and also serve on our advisory board. We also do a lot of senior experience projects. That's been my history with the college. I ran that program for about 5 years. We've done well over 1,500 companies in the North County area, several hundred in this town of Vista alone. Second major initiative, besides being market-driven by our business and community partners, are the development of soft skills. So we can excel academically in our students, but I'm sure many of you are aware that more than 50% of our students are first-generation college students. They're lacking the soft skills, the ability to do professional networking, informational interviews, do professional level presentations. So I have 3 new large pilot programs that we've implemented to develop soft skills. Our expectation is that will significantly improve our ability to place students in jobs upon graduation. We like to think of ourselves as serving our community, our local businesses, and providing future employees to all of our local businesses. And so I welcome any of you that are interested in having a tour of our campus. It's changed quite dramatically in the last year or two. I'll leave a couple of business cards here and be more than willing to give anybody here a tour if they're interested. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. The next thing on our agenda, did anybody have any comments? No. I thought maybe somebody pushed their button and I didn't see it. Okay. Next thing on our agenda is our consent calendar. The recommendations on our consent calendar will be enacted in one motion unless an item is removed from the calendar. Any member of the public may remove an item by submitting a request to speak card to the city clerk. And items removed from the consent calendar will be considered immediately following the adoption of the consent calendar. So we have items C1 through C10 are on our consent calendar, and I don't have anything pulled from the public on our consent calendar. Do I have anything that wanted to be pulled from our council? Any items? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion for the approval of that consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, please cast your votes. So, Assistant City Clerk, did you want something, or is that your name on there? That's Amanda Lee.
I think it's Amanda.
Amanda, is that your button that you pressed? Oh, it says Amanda Lee. It says which. Buttons are mixed up. Okay, sorry. Okay, then the next thing on our agenda are our discussion items. Items scheduled for discussion generally require detailed explanation by staff and agency member input. So tonight we have 3 discussion items. And the first one on there is the regulation of the sale of dogs and cats at retail pet stores. And our Assistant City Manager, Allie Zimmerman, will introduce the item.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. I'm Allie Zimmerman, Assistant City Manager, and with me tonight is Tony Winnie, our Assistant to the City Manager. He'll be presenting the staff report.
Good evening. On August 25th, 2015, staff was directed to return to City Council with an ordinance proposing regulations on the sale of dogs and cats at retail pet stores. The goal of this ordinance was to prevent the sale of dogs and cats sourced from puppy mills and other businesses that do not meet minimum standards of care for animals in their possession. A number of cities in San Diego County have adopted similar regulations within the last few years. Approximately 50 cities nationwide have adopted similar regulations as well. Currently, the city of Vista has 5 retail stores that sell fish, small rodents, and/or reptiles, but not dogs and cats. Presented for consideration before you tonight is a draft ordinance, which is Exhibit 1 in your agenda packet, similar to the Option 2 ordinance provided by Councilman Campbell at the August 25th City Council meeting. The ordinance does not include an exemption for non-commercial breeders to sell dogs or cats to retail pet stores, and does not ban the sale of rabbits by retail pet stores either. It does contain a requirement for pet stores to provide a certificate of source, to be posted in a conspicuous place within 3 feet of each dog or cat enclosure, ensuring that the dog or cat was obtained from an animal shelter, rescue organization, or individual breeders that have given the dogs and cats to the pet store for free. Based upon prior directions from City Council, staff recommends City Council adopt the proposed ordinance as outlined in Exhibit 1. That concludes my presentation, and myself and Ms. Zimmerman are here to answer any questions that you might have.
I have several speakers. Would you like to hear the speakers next? Okay, we'll start with Susan Powell, and she'll be followed by Linda Martino.
Hello, thank you for listening to me this evening. I have been a resident of Vista.
Speak right into your microphone. Pull it down. Pull it down just a little bit. So you speak right
I
in.
have been a resident of Vista for off and on for the last 30 years. I have 3 rescue animals. I'm very, very familiar with this type of breeding and selling. It's a terrible, terrible thing. I have one animal that came from a store that sold these animals. The animal has an ongoing problem his whole life with his digestive system, and it is a result of bad breeding. I don't want to see this type of thing in Vista. There are plenty of places to go if you want to adopt an animal, and if you want a Sheltie, if you want a Doxy, there are breed rescues everywhere. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to get the animal that you want without having to go through a sales place like the ones that we have successfully gotten closed, and hope that this area will not have another one like it. Thank you very much for listening.
Linda Martino, and the speaker after that will be Tom Fleming.
Mayor Ritter and council members, my name is Linda Martino, and I've been a Vista resident for quite a few years, and I am a cat breeder. And I am speaking in support of the ordinance as was submitted by your staff. It's well thought out. It's a clean ordinance, and I'm really pleased to see what they were able to recommend. It does allow for the placement of dogs and cats from shelters and rescue, but prohibits it from breeders for sale. And I urge you all to approve it. It's something we can support.
Thank you. Tom Fleming, followed by Leslie Davies.
Good evening, Mayor Ritter and City Council members. Tonight I rise in opposition to this proposal, and the primary reason is I don't believe we need to add regulation to regulation. There's regulations that says you can't abuse animals, you can't mistreat them, you can't do the things that are done to them that we all agree should not be done. However, I want to tell you a little story about a personal story. My wife is very, very allergic to dogs, and we love them. And about 2 years ago, we had to have our 17-year-old toy poodle put down. She finally got to the point where it just wouldn't work anymore. We decided after a few months to have another one. We had a heck of a time trying to find a puppy that we could bring into our home again, because it just became totally burdensome. We looked at a number of breeders in this area, in the Southern California, Arizona area. They would, for a lot of money, send you one with no guarantee you keep it, and that was it. And so we finally went to the pet store over in Oceanside, and the owner there took the time to order a couple, and we know where they came from. We know the type of people they were. We saw the pictures of where they came from, and we were able to pick the one that fit our personality and not just take whatever they had. So I just want you to take a minute to really think about this. But the biggest thing is, as a conservative, I just don't believe in ever stacking regulation on top of regulation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fleming. Leslie Davies, followed by Lori Quattrone.
Hi, Mayor Ritter and council members. Thank you so much for taking this on. Thank you, Councilman Campbell. Anyway, I just want to say that when cities enact these bans, such as LA, the euthanasia rate significantly declines. So, for example, when LA enacted the ban, the euthanasia rate went from 39% down to 24% in 3 years. In Albuquerque, it went from 43% down to 12% in 10 years. In regards to people being able to get pets, there are hundreds of rescue organizations on the internet, and if you're resourceful, you'll be able to find one, or you'll be able to find a reputable breeder. There's hundreds of reputable breeders. You don't need to go to a pet store to find these. Also, passing a ban with an exemption rewards the backyard breeders while punishing responsible and reputable breeders. And that's because reputable breeders do not sell their pets to pet stores. So if you include an exemption in this ban, you're actually going to be pushing the good, responsible, reputable breeders out of the market. And secondly, backyard breeders don't pay income tax and they don't charge sales tax. And Oceanside ordinance went into effect the first of this month with the exemption, and the current owner of the Oceanside Puppy Mill store is unwilling to cooperate with the regulations passed by the city of Oceanside. And so code enforcement is having to go down there and issue citations to stop the owner from continually breaking the law. And it's an ongoing issue right now. We're spending all kinds of city resources, money, time, just trying to enforce the current ordinance with the ban. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Lori Quattrone, followed by Lanny Bray.
I was locked out. They locked the door downstairs by accident. So I just want to take a minute to express my thanks to the City Council for considering putting an end to the puppy mill pet stores in the city that I'm now proud to call my neighborhood. Approaching the cities of San Diego to outlaw what has become one of the biggest domestic pet abuse issues has been a real experience and a journey. The more we're learning about the puppy mill industry, it's like opening Pandora's box. The horrors of the industry just keep getting larger and larger, and as a compassionate citizen, I feel the need to bring this issue into the light. By passing this ordinance, not only will the city say it doesn't tolerate animal abuse here, but in the process, we've been able to educate the citizens of this community on this very important subject. Hopefully in the future, everyone will know the true meaning of what a puppy mill is and will shy away from the places that sell those animals. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Lanny Bray, followed by Karen Clayton.
Good evening, council members and Mayor Ritter. I handed out one of each of these to all of you, and I guess you get to read them after the meeting. Over the past decade, people have been uncovering the truth behind the pet store industry, an industry that has flown under the radar for far too long. For years, puppy mill breeders, brokers, and pet store owners have been profiting in a huge way while turning a blind eye to the cruelty involved. As long as that check comes in, they don't care whether others suffer or not. All they see is the profits they're making. And just like every evil in the world, money is the motivator. We realize shutting down pet stores is not the end of this fight. We're not stupid people. But as each city says no thanks to pet stores, a snowball effect is occurring. And people are realizing, what is it that's wrong with pet stores? Why are they all closing? The evidence is overwhelming. Puppy mills are no better than factory farms for dogs. Not only are the dogs victimized, but consumers also pay the price when they are led to believe that they are purchasing a quality product. A $3,000 price tag surely means that I'm buying a superior puppy. Puppy mills breed puppies for bulk and profit. How else is every pet store in the country going to keep its cages full? It has to be done in mass production. In order to change all of this, we must start with each city. Legislators have the responsibility to provide laws for the common good. The only way this horrendous situation will even begin to change is with people like you. If nothing changes, the implications will have a negative impact on us all. The problem needs to be tackled at the source, and the despicable practice of puppy farming must become a thing of the past. This Sunday, September 27th, is National Puppy Mill Awareness Day. And what a better way to acknowledge that by saying, no thanks, we do not want pet stores in Vista. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Clayton, followed by Linda Sabo. I don't see Karen. Karen Clayton. Oh, that was you. Oh. What happened to then Lanny Bray?
She was there.
Oh, well, holy cow. How about Linda? How about Linda Sabo? Is she here? There she is. I got behind.
Hello, I am Linda Sabo. I am a past board member for 10 years of the North County Humane Society, and I was the president for 3 or 4 years. And I just want to thank you for even considering this. This is something that they were working on a decade before I got involved. There are good breeders. This is not a blanket thing, but puppy mills are horrendous. It's just, I had a Springer Spaniel for 18 years. He was the most beautiful dog you could see. 5 different doctors said everything inside of him was wrong. He had 2 hips that had to be replaced. He had thyroid, and it all was because he came from a puppy mill. He was bred for his looks. And it's a horrible thing, and so at the very least, I ask you to send this to staff with a recommendation to keep working on it. But this is really, if you think cage-free chicken eggs and things like that are even something to consider, think of a dog and how dogs relate to humans. It's just, you can't do this. So thank you very much. And think what Pope Francis would do.
Thank you, Linda. Okay, that's all of our speakers. So with that, we'll go on to and see what the council has to say. So Councilmember Campbell.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to first thank staff for bringing back an excellent ordinance that we can adopt tonight, hopefully. As you know, I brought this issue forward because it's an issue that we don't currently have in the city, but it's an important issue that we address before we have a problem. If you look at the city of Oceanside and the challenges they're going through with an obstinate business that's operating unlawfully, the amount of money that the city is going to have to spend on code enforcement and legal challenges to that business to stop their operation, we don't want that here in the city of Vista. This is not a partisan issue. You look at the city of San Diego, one of their Republican council members brought that forward. You look at the city of Encinitas with their bipartisan support for this type of ordinance. And city of San Diego and Encinitas adopted ordinances very, very similar to this. So with that, I would like to make a motion to adopt staff recommendation and approve this ordinance.
Deputy Mayor Aguilera.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So originally, I was against this ordinance. After hearing many speakers, though, I think I've gone to the other side on this one. So I'll tell you the reasons why. The euthanizing statistic is a big one. I think Vista, North County in general, has a lot of stray animals, and people sometimes just don't take care of them, and I hate to see that. And I know what the fate is for that animal, one way or the other, and I think that's one good reason to take a look at this. Some of the other reasons, as far as this specific ordinance, because this is without the exemption, is that after talking to a couple of people in my office, they brought up the fact that, some of these breeders wouldn't be paying income tax, and I started thinking about it, and of course not. They kind of go under the radar, and that's not good for our city either. Nor is the fact that they're not paying their business license either. So, that's some assumption, but I'm a business person, and I think that I know business people pretty well, and I think if they think they can get away with it, they will. And they're out a lot of times out in the county anyways, and it's an area that we can't enforce some of these laws and ordinances for ourselves. Which brings me to the other part, which is the code enforcement. How do we even enforce some of this stuff? We're down staff as it stands, so I think this would be a burden on the city. And so if we're going to do this, I think we need to do this the right way without the exemption, so that it's not a burden on staff and city, and we protect those animals. So I'll go ahead and second this.
Any other council members have any? Councilmember Rigby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I want to thank everybody who came here tonight and for all of the speakers and for the information that you've shared with us. I appreciate your passion and your energy and your time. In further review of this issue over the last few weeks, first I want to just talk about the euthanasia issue that was brought up. San Diego County is a no-kill county. We don't euthanize any animals in San Diego County. And even the animals that I've spoken with the county, so this is the information that they provide. And even the animals who might have behavior or health issues, they have facilities for those animals as well. And they reached 100% of their no-kill just this last summer. So it took them 3 years of innovation and introduction of different types of programs to get to that level. So I was very happy to hear that the county, with the work of the Board of Supervisors and the County Animal Control and the Humane Society, has reached that goal, which is the information that I was given. And we also have information that 4% of the animals are purchased from pet stores. The other 96% are not purchased from pet stores. They come directly from breeders or family members and rescues. Rescue animals make up 31% of cats and 23% of dogs. So I think that what you're doing with education and outreach is actually quite successful when you look at where we were before with animals coming from pet stores versus down to only 4% of animals coming from pet stores. So to look at that, and then the income tax, or those are regulated issues, and that's out of the purview of our jurisdiction. Income tax, or sales tax, would be the Board of Equalization. So that is something that needs to be looked at on that level. And this industry is regulated and it is licensed. And we do not have any of the breeders here. We don't have any stores that sell these. And I'm just not sure that I want to go down a road where we're going to regulate an industry that we don't even have here in Vista. I think that's ineffective government. So for those reasons, I'm going to have to vote no on this one.
Okay, anybody else? Councilmember Franklin?
I really have to agree with the idea that we are adding a layer of regulation and banning a business which, in fact, doesn't even exist yet in our city. I would agree. I'm not swayed by the idea about euthanasia, and I'll tell you why. We all know that we're not doing that in our local animal shelters, and there's, of course, been a movement, thank goodness, over the past several decades to eliminate euthanasia in animal shelters. And so naturally those numbers are moving that direction, and sort of like ice cream sales and drowning are correlated by time but not causally correlated. I think it would be difficult for us to say that we're going to have an impact. As Councilwoman Rigby pointed out, by our policies at the county level, in fact, we would have no impact because we're not euthanizing now. I look at what some of the other councils have done around the county, And, I am so in agreement with everyone that has come to speak in support of ending puppy mills. I could not agree more that the practice is reprehensible, and I would like to eliminate it altogether. But I'm also concerned. I mean, we've passed many unenforceable ordinances. Passing a law to prevent someone from doing business that because they may be purchasing from someone in their supply chain may be not acting according to the law, and let me reiterate, according to the law. It just seems to me that banning people who would be honest and who would care about animals from entering the ability, from entering business to sell pets, we're banning the good actors here along with the bad, and that's something that I'm really concerned about, because I think too often we've reacted with a desire to solve problems, but the reality is this is a problem that it's addressed by legislation in another forum, which is mainly federal, and B, despite our great desire to eliminate the practice of puppy mills, I'm not sure that we can functionally do that. And I understand the incremental element. I particularly, if we pass something, and we've heard so many, and I appreciate we've heard so many folks testify that a breeder would not sell to pet stores. So clearly it wouldn't be a problem to include an exemption for an ethical breeder, because as we've heard repeatedly, that's not going to be an issue. Breeders wouldn't do that. So if we do have ethical breeders that want to step in and fill that demand, and I think there is a demand. We all have pets. We all have family members who've bought pets. And, one of the causes of adding so many layers of regulation is that we have driven the price of things like buying a family pet in the state of California and other parts of the country, but really in California, it's the issue is exacerbated, I think. We have added, by adding so much regulation, we have also dramatically increased the cost. And, I think about the average resident of the city of Vista earns $50,000. And so to spend thousands of dollars on a pet really constitutes a barrier. And I understand it because I have shelter-adopted pets myself. That is definitely preferable. But I can't understand why we would want to ban all good actors from the marketplace. I mean, and really, I want to focus just for 1 second on that word marketplace. If I'm in the business of breeding dogs, I'm not necessarily in the business of creating a marketplace where buyers and sellers come together. Marketplaces, like a grocery store where we go and buy the food that's grown at the farm, marketplaces serve an important function because they do allow buyers and sellers to access one another. And what we're really saying is we're going to eliminate the marketplace for family pets. And my concern is that we're creating an ever greater barrier between families, particularly families of ordinary means, like those that live in our city. We're creating ever greater barriers from them and the ability to enjoy the happiness. And if I could get on a soapbox quite this high and say the happiness that was envisioned by the folks who talked about it in the Declaration of Independence. I mean, the right to enjoy the company of an animal, I mean, that seems like such a fundamental and basic, American right. So, if we move forward, I would like to see that a reputable breeder who's sourced and has a certificate of origin provided and displayed at a pet store, I'd like to see that a reputable breeder could, in fact, offer animals that are bred ethically and humanely. There has to be. We can't say because we're having difficulty as the government enforcing our own rules, we'll just ban something altogether. You can't take away people's rights who are good actors and who are ethical and honest simply because government struggles to stop all of the wrong that exists in the world. And so for that reason, and for, I'm sure there are those that will say that any opposition to this must be tantamount to supporting puppy mills. Of course I don't support puppy mills. I want to see every animal treated humanely, and I want to see anybody who treats animals inhumanely punished to the greatest extent allowable by the law. But I think that we should have an exemption for the ethical and honest breeder, to provide pets to a pet store. And so, right now, because the language we're voting on doesn't include that, and honestly, we don't have the stores now. The real demonstration of the problem, we're passing a law, and usually we're here to solve problems, and the real demonstration of the exhibition of this problem in our local community, to me, I'm not seeing the tangible evidence of this problem here. And so, I want to hear some more discussion on this issue, but I got to say, exactly what Mr. Fleming said, we create so many layers of regulation, and it's really out of frustration that we're not able to stop people from doing bad things. And I'm not sure that creating one more layer of regulation which will frustrate the honest person, the ethical person, the animal lover, the family of ordinary means that wants to bring a pet into its family, I'm not sure that frustrating that individual is truly going to stop the person who's the bad actor, the puppy mill, the unethical pet store owner. I just, if I truly felt that we could take an action from this dais that would stop puppy mills, that would stop the suffering of animals, I would be motioning it myself, and you couldn't, I would talk just as long in favor. But I'm not convinced that this, as it stands right now, is going to accomplish that end. And I do have significant fear that it's going to stand in the way of families that live in our city from acquiring a family pet. So that's where I stand right now. I would really like to hear some more from other council members about what they have to say about that.
Okay, I see a couple of other speakers, but let me just say that thinking about that, it doesn't exist in our city, but I know they've had a problem when it does exist, and the problem is then trying to take care of it or to ban it. I know San Marcos had that problem when they were going to ban have the ordinance, and then the one opened in between when they had were thinking about it. One opened, and then they had to do it differently. They did they just put it out there. What is that? It's not banned, but they did what. Yeah, temporary moratorium. They did a temporary moratorium. So, and that's because they had one that opened there, because then you get into legal problems. So I don't want to wait for one to exist in our city. And I don't feel like we're banning it from the marketplace, because I feel like there's reputable breeders you can buy from. You can, in a store, pet store, you can have rescue pets or shelter, pets from the shelter. So there are other animals that you can have there. I guess my only concern I have would be is on when they have the thing on the exemptions, the chapter doesn't apply to a person or establishment that sells, delivers, offers. This is great. Offers for sale, barters, auctions, gives away, leases, or otherwise transfers or disposes of dogs or cats that were born or reared on the premises of the person or establishment. So that would be it doesn't apply to them. But I guess my worry would be that a pet mill would set up a store and have their puppy mill in the back and then sell the dogs retail. Or I also heard about a family that had bought a dog from a puppy mill or whatever on lease. They thought they bought it, and they found out in the end, when they had all the problems with it and everything, that they actually had a lease on the dog. So, which who would know that? So, I kind of have a problem with that one exemption, and which is on 6.10.030. So I just had a problem with that. I would probably take that out and just say that a commercial breeder would be okay, but. That would be that's where I would stand. So let me hear from Deputy Mayor Aguilera.
Okay, so I don't see how we're banning people from owning pets. We don't have a pet store in Vista or So, and people have pets. They have dogs, they have cats. I have a cat. We got the cat from the Humane Society. So we're not banning anybody from having pets. That doesn't make sense to me. And at the same time, I think that most people that the average person out there, or the person that has below average income that wants a pet, those avenues are still open. And I would think that those people, like myself, would go to the rescue center and pick an animal or get on the internet. The market's changed. We see that in a lot of our businesses throughout the city. We're having a hard time filling our commercial spaces because people are accessing their goods and animals, through the internet. So I think the world has changed in the last 20 years significantly in how we access our goods and items, and again, even our animals. So I think that avenue is still open. It's an open market, and I can argue that the internet is probably a more efficient market than a pet store. And to address the euthanasia, to be honest, I didn't know that fact. However, it doesn't really change my mind on that item. It's still stray animals, and it's good to hear that they're not going to be terminated. But at the same time, we don't want to have stray animals. And stray animals can get hit by cars. A lot of bad things can happen, and we know all that, and I don't need to go through that. So I think I still support staff on this, and I'm not interested in removing the exemption at this point. I think if we're going to do this, just do it right and be done with it. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Campbell?
Mayor, I had a question for you regarding that portion that you just mentioned. Are you suggesting that the exemption is too broad and would allow pet stores to open up their own breeding operation, or that you want to allow for more exemption?
No, I don't want to allow for more. No, I had a problem with that. I thought it allowed people to open like a retail store and have their pet thing in the back and then sell. I just thought it was too
So you want it
loose.
to be more stringent?
Yes.
Okay. Could the
Thank
city
you.
attorney address that concern, perhaps?
The exemption there is intended, at least in part, to deal with the issue of a family that has a litter of kittens and wants to give them away. If you remove number one entirely, it would be illegal to give away your kittens.
Oh. I wouldn't want to preclude anybody from giving away their kittens.
And I think that with the intent of that provision in the ordinance, we would not license through our business licensing department a premise that was intended to be a breeding operation.
That's true.
So that would prohibit and preclude that scenario from occurring. So I think hopefully that addresses that, but thank you for your comment on that. And I just wanted to clarify that you did want it to be more stringent and not allow for commercial breeding.
No.
That said, I think that some of the arguments that we're going to eliminate the ability for people in Vista to acquire a family pet is a step a little too far. It's somewhat humorous in a way. No offense, Councilmember Franklin, I kind of understand what you're trying to say, but if you're out to find a very specific dog or a cat, you can go to either Petco or PetSmart, which will help work with you with the adoption agencies. There's a computer in the store at Petco's that you can log into, search for a specific breed. It shows you all those that are available within a specific area, and you can adopt pets that you're looking for. There's rescue agencies for specific breeds. There's rescue agencies for pretty much any type of dog or cat that you could imagine, that you're able to go get that specific pet that you're looking for. We don't have dog or cat sales in the city of Vista currently. We don't want them. Once they're here, creating an ordinance, as the mayor mentioned, after the fact is not possible to get rid of that business. So you have to put an ordinance in place before you have the problem before you in the city. It's not done in reverse. This is the correct way of doing it. You put the ordinance first to protect the city from having to spend tens of thousands of dollars on legal fees and code enforcement. Our code enforcement staff is barely able to handle the problems that we have in the city today. The last thing we want to do is start utilizing them to be the puppy mill inspection enforcement. Unless we're going to hire more officers to stand outside and track down where the dogs are coming from and travel to Missouri to actually inspect the facilities, which we're not going to do, then there's never a way to be sure that the dogs or cats are coming from a quote-unquote reputable or ethical breeder. And first off, I think the city attorney may agree with me, that is a very slippery slope legally. How do you define that? I don't know that there is a way to do that, reputable. Well, that's a great concept, but what is that? So this ordinance is the cleanest, most effective way to ensure that we don't have this problem going forward in the future in the city. And I would ask that we vote on this item as presented to us, as was motioned.
Councilmember Franklin.
Because I have the concerns that I've identified, and I would just briefly reiterate that I think we can be a council that heads in the direction or has a vision for our city of an ever larger government, one that's ever more present in our citizens' lives, one that takes more freedoms away, or we can be one that seeks to empower citizens to make good decisions and punish those who behave badly. To me, this is much more about the direction of government in general than it is about my very strong desire to stop the practice of puppy mills. And that's why, as it's written, I cannot support this. I would consider, because there seems to be some urgency and a fear of these businesses opening in our city, I would move, if there would be a second and the council would agree, I would move right now that that this bill have a sunset 1 year from enactment. That would give us an opportunity to contemplate this issue in the future and understand its impact on our community. And so if there's a second, I would like to move that there be a sunset to this to give us the opportunity to reconsider the issue 1 year from enactment.
Do I have a second anywhere?
I withdraw my motion then.
Okay. Okay, then I guess seeing no more conversation, I guess we're ready to cast your votes? That motion passes 3-2. Okay. Thank you. The next thing on our agenda are our cultural arts productions and admission prices, and the Director of Director of Recreation and Community Services, Bill Fort Miller, will introduce the item. If you could kind of be quiet while you're working your way out, please, so our meeting can go on.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Bill Fort Miller, Director of Recreation and Community Services. To my right is Dan Kays, Cultural Arts Division Manager, and Dan will be presenting the presentation tonight.
Great. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. It's a pleasure to be here tonight to discuss our plans for the exciting 2016 for the Cultural Arts Division and also for the City of Vista. It's our 36th summer season in 2016, and it's also the kickoff of our inaugural Moonlight Presents programming. Tonight, we're coming forward about pricing changes and structures, and with those, we're trying to look at three things. One is to offset uncontrolled increased costs of utilities, the minimum wage increase that it's upcoming, and including scenic transportation and set rental expenditures for the quality and the newer shows that we are bringing here to the City of Vista. Also, we're going to be enhancing the patron experience at the venue by asking to establish 2 new pricing areas within the amphitheater and establishing a pricing framework for the Moonlight Presents program. The first slide shows you the summer season ticket pricing structure first. You have the 2015 alongside the proposed 2016. The single ticket pricing, we're a general increase of $3 on the pricing levels across the board, in particular the orchestra and reserved seating areas. And along that, above, the subscription prices reflect a package discount based off of the single ticket price. You're looking at a 27% discount on the Wednesday, Thursday, Sunday, and a 25% discount on the Friday, Saturday. We look to give a lower discount and try to get families on those weeknights. We don't really need as high of a discount on the weekends. The next thing, I'm going to skip the fringe. I'm going to go right to the reserve lawn. Something very exciting came about. It's been asked for many, many years. How can we reserve that piece of grass that we want to sit on and not have to wait in line for hours? This became available during the installation of the synthetic turf and the ability to designate the sectors and the seating areas by being able to mark them out. We took this summer season to observe the density of the patrons attending and seeing what they naturally do and how they lay themselves out, and that's how we've emulated our seating map, which we'll be looking at in a couple slides. This is going to increase the customer service and the patron experience all around by allowing patrons to purchase the reserve lawn ahead of time, no more waiting in line, and it also reduces a very bad customer service and customer experience issue, which is outside the gates when people wait in line at 2 o'clock and then 20 people cut in front of them because the person in front of them was saving spaces for those 20 people. You can buy them online. You'll be able to buy them online, buy them over the phone, in person, and even purchase that grass area as a season ticket for all 4 shows. The fringe pricing, the one above, this is a third pricing structure in the hard seats with some minor infrastructure changes on the outside edges of the last row of the reserve lawn. We are looking to install ADA accessible wheelchair spaces and companion seats at the edges of row N. What this allows us is to create a new pricing level because we have now accessibility to that pricing level. We're looking to, the fringe will be a reduction in the price for the reserved seating just when you're out to the outside edges. We're looking at the last 10 to 16 seats, depending on which row you're in. This provides the venue to have 3 price levels in the hard seats, and it allows those with fixed incomes to have one more option in the hard seat before they have to go sit in a low back lawn chair. And we've been needing that for years, and we will have that ability on the outside edges. With that, the general lawn, the lawn that you now will wait in line for, which will be to the outside edges of the reserve lawn or to what we call the Great Hill, which is above the sound and lighting booth, we will be reducing greatly the adult price, and the price is obviously below that, so that we can make that the family affordable. The people that want to experience the Moonlight for the first time will be able to come in at a much better price. You're looking at a reduction from an adult ticket, which currently is $24 on a weeknight. That'll go down to $15 on a weeknight on Wednesday, Thursday, Sunday. Currently, general admission is $31 on a Friday, Saturday. That'll go down to $20. So, and then of course the breakdown for the seniors and the military pricing below that reflect that. And the last one, I don't have a slide for it, but Moonlight Presents. We're asking for a pricing framework that gives us ranges to work within. When negotiating with artists and artist fees and artist needs, it can be all over the map. And once you have settled with an artist and have agreed to what you're going to cover in costs, you need the flexibility in the pricings to be able to make up that on the make up that revenue on to offset the expenditure side. So what we're looking at is a range for the Moonlight Live series, which is more music, concert-based, a little bit higher end, bringing in some names. That'll be a 25 on the low end to a 65 on the high end. The Moonlight Variety, which is more the family programming, bringing in those shows that are magic, circus, things that it could be music, but more towards the younger and the family ages. We're looking at a range from 10 to 25. And then the Cabaret Club M, the one that's inside, is that dinner experience. That's an $80 price. It's not a range. That $80 allows us to pay for the food service, the dinner, and also for the entertainment. So in all that, I'm looking at this would be the new seating map for the Moonlight Amphitheater. And I'm just going to zoom in on the house right section. As you can see, the reserved lawn is broken down into sectors. Each sector is about 22 feet in length. That allows for 12 seating areas per sector. And with that, you have all of the grass and lawn in front of you for your blankets, for your coolers, and for someone who doesn't end up wanting to sitting in a seat, they can lay on the grass. What that does is between the house right side and the house left side gives us a 408 reserved lawn spaces. Okay. And this is a mock-up that we did of kind of what it would look like. As our staff are there waiting for a show, they got their blankets out. And again, this pretty much matches the natural density that happens on a typical busy night. People get that close. There's enough room for your arms. You're not on top of each other, but there's enough room in front for you to be able to have a blanket. So you're looking at the first row, that would be Sector 1, and you would have grass areas 1 through 12, and we'll be able to mark that on the back concrete so you know kind of where your area is going to be. We are looking at, to go ahead and do, where you see the red ribbons, that would be the end of the sector, and we would look at doing marking that on the grass so it's very easy to see where you're going to be at. And on the other side, you can see where the edges are, where the seats end. There are still lawn on the outside edges. That's where some general admission could come in and squeeze in on those outside edges. And then the fringe area, if you look at the one on the left and where it says ADA, that's where the pad will be poured. And then we would be removing a couple of seats to bring in the wheelchair spaces and bring in companion accessible arms. And once we do that, then these seats marked on the yellow would be reduced to that fringe price level, and to give us, again, that last option before someone has to go to a lawn chair, especially those that are patrons who want to be in a hard seat but can't afford to be in that reserve price. They get one more option before going into the lawn. That's the end of my presentation, and Bill and I are here to answer any questions or make any clarifications. Thank you.
Okay, I don't have any speakers to this. What is your pleasure, Council? Councilmember Campbell.
First, I'd like to thank staff at the Moonlight for working on this. It's going to be a great option, I think, for people to be able to reserve lawn seats. So with that, I'd like to move to adopt the changes as recommended by staff.
Councilmember Franklin.
I just want to ask, because I'm the new guy and I don't know the answer to this, have we considered in the past giving a discount to the citizens of Vista? Do we know what the percentage of ticket sales to residents versus non-residents of the city? Do we have an idea of what that is, or no?
What we do is we have in our subscriptions, the households for our subscribers, there is the majority, a large percentage of our subscribers are Vista residents, but those are, it's like, I want to say 26, 27%. And then it breaks down from there, and that's in the subscriptions. On a single night, we don't collect that.
You're saying 26 or 27% are Vista residents that you're aware of?
Correct, based on past demographics.
Okay.
Season tickets, yeah. So those are people that buy the package and come back, and because we have their addresses, we have their information. If they buy online, we get information. Sometimes people buy online, they only provide just the email address, or if they buy at the door, we don't capture that information when they come. It's a door sale at that time. The challenge, I think, for selling just to Vistans is how do you do it? How do you prove it? What is that customer relationship in terms of the sales process? And how do you make that available online? Because right now, everything's available online. And then how does a person go online And how do they validate in that sales process that they're a citizen of Vista to get that discount? I think would be very difficult to do.
Well, you could require them to mail the tickets to a Vista address, residential Vista address.
Right, but then the ability for the person to print their tickets at home, which is one of the customer service friendly ideas, that you buy it online, I can print it at home, and I just show up and scan it. You would take that ability away.
I didn't realize that was an ability.
I'm sorry?
I didn't realize that you could
Yes.
print the tickets out online. That's
At home.
Next year, I'm not going to throw a monkey wrench in your well-devised plans here, but next year I'd like to hear a proposal that would give some recognition, because I support regular increases. What I would never want to see you do is wait 5 years and then come for a 15% increase. I think it's good to increase, keep your prices current. Yeah, that way people don't have sticker shock. I think that's good. I think that's a wise business practice. But no matter how nominal, whether it's 10% or whatever it is, I would really like to see that we have an amenity that we provide to the community at large, and because the citizens do have a contribution they make through the city, and their tax dollars support it. And by the way, a wonderful shout out to the Vista, the Moonlight Cultural Foundation for making it a net zero proposition for us. So we're grateful that they do that. But I think it would be great to figure out, and I realize you've got some very significant issues you raised, but there must be some way to do it. Carlsbad offers a discount for their residents when they play on their golf course. I realize it's a different type of entertainment venue, but it does pay respect to the citizens whose tax dollars built and support the thing. So 12 months from now, when you're back, I would really like to, if we could, examine that.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm gonna propose at that time that the council take an action. So if you would think one out so that I don't make a poorly conceived proposal, I would be grateful.
I will be thinking out of the box.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Just a comment, if I can, Mayor. In this next 12 months, while the council is thinking about this, just so you're aware, the city does have a $200,000 subsidy that we fund through to the Moonlight to make it whole. And if we are going to give or reduce the price for a resident, which if that's the council's pleasure, that's fine, the subsidy would either need to go up or we would either need to raise ticket prices.
I thought we were
for
break
those that
even
aren't
this
residents.
last year with the contribution from the Cultural Foundation.
So last year was an unusual year with Mary Poppins, which we sold, I believe, 5,000 or 6,000 more tickets than we normally sell.
Right.
But typically, the subsidy and the threshold by the council via the goal-setting session was 200,000. And Mr. Kays or Mr. Fortmuller can correct me, but I think we're pretty close to that subsidy level coming into the year.
Just about 200,000. Yeah.
So what is this begs some, I'd like to set up a follow-up meeting to this. I'd like to have a one-on-one where we discuss, I'd like to understand, and I don't want to get all into it tonight, but I'd like to understand the drivers of increased costs. And you know, are we just meeting the increased costs, or are we also attempting to chip away at that deficit? I'd like to understand where we're at there. And there is at some point at which, okay, so this year we're subsidizing $200,000. Presumably, then next year there's going to be a subsidy. All the more reason to ask for a discount for the people who are paying that subsidy. So then, if we are increasing the price just to meet increased costs, then presumably our subsidy will be the same.
Correct.
Presumably. But if we are going to increase beyond increase in cost, then presumably our subsidies should be diminished. At some point, if you're just increasing prices, or dare we consider increasing the prices for non-residents just slightly higher than the increase for residents, and preserving, let's call it, instead of increasing the price for non-residents, let's refer to preserving the lower prices for Vista residents. There's got to be a way to work this out. I just think, that providing that measure of respect to our citizens, that we understand that we've created a great cultural resource for the community, but we want to thank them for their specific contribution by recognizing them with a special pricing. doesn't have to be 50%. 10% is just it's a show of respect to our citizens who are supporting it above and beyond the purchase of their tickets. So to me that makes sense. But maybe I'm all wet. But let's talk about it more. I'd like to understand, and I think in the next 12 months we could think of something that would make sense.
Yeah. So we're happy to have that conversation.
Yep.
Deputy Mayor Aguilera.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's a great idea. I'm willing to talk about that. I think it's a good thing for the citizens of Vista, and I'm sure there's a way we can work it out. With maybe if there's future increases, we don't increase it for Vista citizens, and I don't know. You guys can figure out the details on the internet sales.
It'll be a
that.
Software discussion with the software company.
I'm sure it's done all the time, so I don't see why that would be an issue. So, anyways, I'm going to go ahead and second. Do we have a motion? Yeah, I'm seconding the staff recommendation.
Councilmember Rigby.
Thank you. Actually, I did want to ask some of those questions. First of all, I wanted to know, how did you arrive at the $3? Was that in anticipation of costs that you estimate, or is that in making up a certain cost deficit that you've identified? How did we get to 3?
The $3 is we know the minimum wage is going to hit us about between 20 and 30. We have 2 shows that we're going to be trucking across the country in 2016, and to truck one truck, and usually there's 2 trucks, it's $5,000 per truck one way. So with that, we're going to be having probably $40,000 in trucking, and where this year we didn't have any trucking costs across the country, that was all local in the LA area. So we have those costs coming up. And then because the shows, we're grabbing the new shows, that's one of the reasons why we're having to come across the country, because these are Broadway sets and costumes. One of the things we try to do to try to save money is we look to our other partners in this area and say, hey, we're going to be doing this show. Can you put it in your season? We'll bring it one way. You guys get it, and you send it back. So we will be working on that. We've already announced our season. A lot of our producing partners up the coast haven't announced their future 2016-17 season yet. So we are in conversations with them to see if we can share those costs. But we have to anticipate that they don't share that cost, and then we would have to absorb that.
Okay. And then my next question is on the seats that we're taking into the fringe area. I guess the yellow on your...
The yellow arrows, correct.
Yellow arrows. How many seats total? I'm sorry, this is really small, and I couldn't see all the little dots.
Adding up both sides,
all together, are there...
106.
106 seats are being reduced in price on those on those. So we talked about the $200,000 a year approximate subsidy. How is this exchange in ticket pricing from the increase over here to the decrease over here? Do we know are we able to estimate what the change in the subsidy would be?
If I knew I was doing Mary Poppins for all 4 shows, I can give you that number right off the top. But it is risk and looking at best practices. I know that I have seniors that go into lawn chairs that really would like to not go into a lawn chair, so they would be paying a little bit higher to go into that fringe. So they're already going to increase their value by going to the outside, because now they have a guaranteed seat and they're not sitting in a lawn chair. We're going to see increases there. The value of that lawn area, the reserved lawn, those that are going to want it are going to do it, and if they can buy a season ticket for it, they're going to pay the money. Whereas before, maybe they just went to 1 show or 2 shows because they didn't want to stand in line for another show. So you're going to have increased value there, and then of course you weigh that then on how many people come per night that are in the general lawn on the outside edges. But I really think the value of having that grass area in between those seats and wanting to guarantee that you sit there will give us that value to make the number that we need to do.
Okay. I think I actually agree with the reserved lawn seating. I think that's a great idea, and I know that it's been talked about for a while, and I'm glad to see it coming forward. I agree with the fringe seating. I personally think there's not a bad seat in the house, but I guess sometimes with sets, depending on what they are, they might have a little better seat than another. So I really like these ideas. I think they're really great, and I was a little concerned with the $3 raise because we are still in a recession. I don't, whatever they're saying on the national level, sometimes we're not seeing it reflected locally. So I was a little concerned about raising rates on our citizens, on our residents who've already put so much time and energy and money into building this facility, but you've added other options in here. So that makes me feel a little bit more comfortable with the $3 raise on some of these other tickets, that you've reduced pricing in other areas and included another layer of options for everybody. And I do also agree with Councilman Franklin on perhaps next year we can look at a particular discount for Vista residents. I think that would be a good thing. So, and I have also, because I was concerned with the raise, I have to make a confession here tonight, my friends. I go to every single Moonlight show, right? But I also go to other theaters. I'm so sorry. I like the theater, and I have been to maybe 3 other productions around the county in the last year, and our prices are still much better and very, very competitive. And so that was also a factor for me saying that I think you've done a really great job, and I am wholeheartedly behind you on this. So thank you very much. And also thank you for the great shows this year, and I'm looking forward to next year.
Thank you. And if I may, that's second. The Moonlight Cultural Foundation helps us as well to keep those prices where they are. So it's a partnership all the way around.
I'll agree with you on the prices, because I'm actually a President's Club member at the Broadway San Diego, and the prices that we charge at our theater are like in the nosebleed section down there, if you're going to go down there. These are so reasonable, and our shows are equally as good as any show I've seen in San Diego. Our actors and our dancers, they do an amazing job. And if you've never been to Moonlight, you guys all need to go. But if you go to this next one, Big Fish, you got to take a Kleenex. I've brought a few sniffles at the end. So it's a great show. If you guys have not experienced it, all of you should go to the shows. And Shrek was my very favorite of all time. I loved Shrek. So anyway, okay, I'm going to do what? Oh, Councilmember Campbell, sorry.
Thank you.
Got all carried away.
I just wanted to say, I do think there is a way we can incorporate a discount for Vista residents. The challenge I can foresee with the online side of it is the software fix to validate a Vista city address is going to be very costly. I've worked with the client before who tried to do something similar, and it was thousands and thousands of dollars. So I think, just to throw it out there may be a way at the end of the year for people to bring their validated ticket purchases and maybe get a refund of some sort to City Hall. Maybe it's $5 a ticket to be able to come in and get their $20 back or $15. But doing the online validation, you can't do it by zip code because, as you know, our zip codes go outside of the city boundaries into the county. So there's a lot of challenges, but hopefully staff, you guys can talk about that and work up some solutions to do that. And the other question is, how can we work in a 5th show for future seasons? So with that, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Aguilera. Do you want to say something?
I do, thanks. Season tickets, are those printed online too, or are those mailed?
No, we do those in-house and mailed.
Okay, so what if we just left it at season tickets get the discount? So, I think...
Yeah, we could look at doing that validation.
So that'd be easier to start with if... anyways, we're not voting on that, so let's go ahead and vote.
Yeah, we'll look at all the options and present them to council.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, with that, if I don't see any more comments, I would say cast your votes, please. That motion passes unanimously. The next thing on our agenda is our Planning Commissioner selection process, and Councilmember Franklin requested this item, so I'm going to turn it over to him.
Thank you, Mayor. In order to foster a closer working relationship with our Planning Commission, and in order to ensure that the Planning Commission reflects the will of the Council, whose work ultimately we have delegated to the Commission, I would like to propose that the mayor have the power to appoint 3 members of the 7, and that each member of the council would have the power to appoint 1 additional member. So this would preserve the mayor's prerogative to appoint still the lion's share, but I would like the members of the council to develop a working relationship with the Planning Commission. And right now, I know several members of the commission, but they don't feel any particular need to reach out to me and communicate with me. So I'd kind of like to foster that relationship. And so for that reason, what I'm proposing is that when vacancies occur, including on the expiration of terms, that so that I'm not proposing changing the current commission. What I'm proposing is that when the next vacancy occurs, that the most senior member of the council be able to make an appointment, and that seat that's being appointed would be given a number, a designator, like the seat number. Let's say the mayor gets to appoint seats number 1, 2, and 3, and Deputy Mayor, since you're the most senior member of the council, you would get to appoint seat number 4, and the next member of the council would get to appoint seat number 5, and so on, such that this new process would only take place upon the expiration of terms or vacancies, so that we're not, turning anybody off of the commission who's there now. But then, as these positions, as the terms expire, or as there is a vacancy, we could fill up those positions. And then, after the first 4 have been filled up, then because the mayor has had the prerogative to appoint all the current members, then the mayor would have the prerogative to appoint positions 1, 2, and 3 as the final 3 that occur on vacancy. That is my proposal, and I would move that we direct the staff to bring that back in form consistent with my description.
Well, I'll start off, and in my opinion, it's a conflict of interest. I think that the process to interview commissioners for the Planning Commission is open. All of us can interview. We've actually put that out there before, but nobody takes. Usually, John will take me up on it, but I haven't had any of you take me up on it. I just think it's like personal control of your own planning commissioner. I think it's better for everyone to be open. Not to think that they're controlled by one of our council members. I think that's just a bad idea. I mean, it just sounds like Washington politics to me. But anyway, I'll go ahead. Councilmember, Deputy Mayor Aguilera.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's a bad idea, and I'll tell you why. I mean, first of all, I think it is cronyism, or potential for cronyism, and I think we have a citizen body that's there to represent the city, and those people, yes, they are nominated by the mayor, but we all get a chance to vote on them, so we can vet through those nominations and decide. And I think it's really important for us to have that separation, from the Planning Commission to the City Council. A couple years ago, we decided that it wouldn't be a good idea for us to, on a regular basis, have somebody sitting in as a liaison to our Planning Commission and to any of our other commissions, because we didn't want to be influencing those citizens of Vista on their decisions. And I think that is exactly what's going to happen here, which you actually stated. So I think for that reason alone, I think it's not something that we can support. I don't have any personal friends, although I do have friends on the Planning Commission, but we don't hang out. we're political friends, I guess, is what you could call them. But I think these are very capable people. We have business owners. We have members of South Vista communities. We have an architect on there. I think we've done a really good job of selection, and I know that staff appreciates the selection that we've made. The area that I was kind of disappointed in is, I know this has been going on for a while, a concern from other council members, is we did open up the interviews and nobody responded. I mean, okay. So I just haven't seen you in the interviews, so I just didn't know. But I think that if you'd want to get involved with the interviews, I think that's a great idea. Or if we want to do the interviews here at council chambers, I think I would be willing to entertain that. But I don't think it would be good for us to each individually appoint someone, because then that also puts a lot of power to the mayor as well. And I don't think that's a good idea. So I can't support it.
So, Councilmember Franklin, your name is on there again, but could I maybe go to Councilmember Campbell first and then back to you?
I'd like to make a clarifying remark, if I could.
Okay, go ahead.
I'd like to clarify that I'm not proposing to change the necessity of the council ratifying the appointments. I'd like to clarify that. So that process would still occur. Look, I'm a little bit remiss that I didn't start out with your very appropriate remark, which is our Planning Commission does a great job. We have, I think a lot of them are here tonight. They do a great job. They're very well qualified. That is not the reason that I bring this up. As far as cronyism, I'm not using that word. But we have a system right now that allows one elected official in the city to essentially offer the names of all 7. This would simply take some of that power and spread it across our citizens' elected officials. So, whether it's this politician or that politician, at the end of the day, we do have 7 appointed unelected officials making decisions, and the citizens' ability to have accountability of their planning commissioners, I think, would be increased by saying, if they didn't like the actions of the person that was appointed by a particular member of the council, then that would reflect on that member of the council, who would have then upon the vacancy. I'm not suggesting, by the way, that we would have the ability to recall our appointee, but just that we would have the ability to fill up the vacancies when they occur. So it wouldn't be like, you didn't vote the right way, so you're fired. I'm not suggesting that we have that kind of power. I'm simply saying that I think it would foster a better, closer working relationship with the Planning Commission if we sort of each had a go-to commissioner that we could have dialogue with, be informed about, from their perspective, what's coming before them. So I just wanted to offer those clarifications, and also wanted to praise the Planning Commission, because honestly they're doing a very tough job, and they're doing some work that if we were doing it all ourselves would be a real burden on us. So I'm grateful to them for what they're doing.
Councilmember Campbell.
Mayor, hold on. For clarification, you do realize that it's open to the public to, apply for whether it's Planning Commission, tax oversight. It's open to the general public as long as you live in Vista. So, the mayor is not handpicking 7 people. The mayor is interviewing all the people, and sometimes it's many. I think we had 40 one time for various, positions, through all the different commissions. So anybody can apply. So we got to interview all those people and go through it and narrow it down.
And you're welcome to interview with us.
And you're welcome, yeah. If you want to take my spot, anytime.
Deputy Mayor, I don't have a friend that I want to appoint to the Planning Commission, so I don't have somebody outlined. I wouldn't even be suggesting, staff, if you'd take note of this, Patrick, I'm not suggesting that we eliminate the application process, and I'm not suggesting that we eliminate the interview process either. I'm simply suggesting that the final nomination power would go to for one commissioner to each council person. I appreciate that you've spent quite a bit of time. If it were my elected authority to appoint all 7 names, then I would have spent the time too, because you're exercising the power of your office, and I appreciate that.
And it's the same in all the cities. There are no cities that have your plan.
I think that's actually incorrect. I think there are cities that have.
Would that be?
I don't know.
We checked with all the local city. We checked with all the local cities and all the cities from, I think it's Solana Beach, everywhere around. The ones that have planning commissions, they all do it the same way we do.
Yeah, I might be wrong, but I actually believe that there are other cities in the county and the state that do have a similar practice.
Oh, I just checked North County cities.
Yeah, I apologize. I didn't do the research. Is certainly a good question, though.
Well, and any decision the Planning Commission makes is appealable to the council if you don't like it. And I would love to have you help interview. Matter of fact, I think I'm interviewing, it's either this Wednesday or next Wednesday, and I have interviews of the youth commissions, and that will be from like 3:30 until 5:30 or 6:30 at night. So you're more than welcome to come and help me. Right. I mean, it isn't just the Planning Commission. You can help interview everybody.
My hope is that by fostering this better relationship with the Planning Commission, that we wouldn't have the necessity to appeal their decisions with any frequency, but that we would more have not just delegated the power to them, but also engaged in constructive dialogue, such that they understand, where the council, is planning a vision for leadership for our city. So anyway,
but that's exactly what we just did. We had a meeting with the Planning Commission, all of us, and we kind of put that out there. And so now we need to give them a chance to, go with our wishes. And we just had that meeting not too long ago.
Again, this is the first change would not occur until the next natural vacancy, if a member resigns or upon expiration of terms. So I'm not suggesting that we alter the present makeup of the Planning Commission whatsoever.
But that, I mean, I think that should be the future. But go ahead. Let's listen to Councilmember Campbell.
So I'm going to kind of take a little bit from both sides here on this issue. So this is basically my 3rd year on the council, and there have been challenges, and staff is aware of this, and I've made my concerns clearly heard on this in the past. When I first came on the council, we weren't even notified of when the interviews were going to take place for various commissions, and then how that process would work and how we would notice that. So only in the last year or so, and even the last time that we were going to have interviews for various commissions, the way we were notified of it, and then by the time it was notified on my schedule, it was too late to publicly notice it effectively, because we can't just 3 of us show up to do interviews. It has to be a publicly noticed meeting. And the city clerk's office has to be involved, and how that whole process works is a challenging issue that we haven't done historically in the city, at least not the 3 years that I've been here. So that issue is something going forward, regardless of what we change with the Planning Commission, needs to be addressed. We need to do the interviews, in my opinion, for all of the offices, for the commissions, at a meeting here. If the applicants don't want to come up in public and answer questions from each one of us, they shouldn't be applying for a board or commission in the city. And they need to be able to face public scrutiny. I've looked at some of the applications that were sent to me in the past, and I said to myself, this person's not qualified, they've checked boxes, they don't even necessarily live in the city. I mean, all these issues that they probably wouldn't have submitted an application if they were going to be publicly scrutinized at a meeting here. So I think that's something, in my opinion, that needs to be addressed. I know it's a lot more convenient and a lot easier for the applicants to do it in a more private setting. And unfortunately, the reality is, and I think Deputy Mayor Aguilera, you alluded to this as well as the Mayor, that it does politicize the process to an extent, unfortunately. that you don't get all the positives from making changes and not have any negatives, and that is a negative. But I'm sure that we can balance those negatives with addressing the concerns that I have, as I know my council colleagues have, of not necessarily being quote-unquote included in the process, but vetting those candidates and applicants prior to them coming before us in a meeting where their name is listed on a piece of paper, that's our only option, is either to accept that applicant or reject it. Other cities do have a more engaged process, even though on paper it's very similar, if not identical, to our current process. They do have a much more engaged role of the council, especially in the selection of the planning commissioners. So, Councilmember Franklin, you have brought forward a concern which I partially share with you, but I think what I would like to see brought back is not a recommendation from staff, but a recommendation from council members that's more vetted on how to potentially propose any changes, with the assistance of staff researching what other cities within San Diego County or other cities, how their selection process goes, because I know that can be a daunting task for one individual to not know the contacts and reach out to all of those cities. I've tried to do something similar in the past, and that's very difficult to do. So before we direct staff to reinvent the wheel, so to speak, I would make a suggestion that perhaps we have a council subcommittee that would examine the issue of commissions. So I'm not suggesting at this time that we make any alterations, but I think it's a worthwhile issue to examine and look at and come back to the council with a recommendation to either leave it the way it is, alter the process, change the interview process, and evaluate it from a more comprehensive standpoint, if that's something you'd be willing to consider.
You know, I just think it is, you know, and I'd be willing to sit through the interview of 40 individuals, but that is a great deal of time and effort. And I appreciate that the mayor has been putting that time in. You know, I just think, you know, I would disagree with the characterization that somehow it's cronyism to have elected official A gets to make all the appointments, but if elected officials B, C, and D had the ability to make one of the appointments, all of a sudden it's a corrupt process. I'm not sure I understand the logic of that argument. However, Councilman Campbell, I think two of the members of the council seem to have a clear, you know, position on this issue. So, you know, I think really you would kind of be the deciding vote here. So it would really kind of come down to what you want to do, because.
Well, I'd like to hear from Councilwoman Rigby.
Sure.
First, if we
Yep.
could.
Councilmember Rigby. Sounds like she's already decided from John Franklin.
I was referring to the mayor and the deputy mayor having already expressed their opinions from the dais, not to Councilwoman Rigby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually have a question for the city attorney. Councilman Franklin had commented in his proposal that it would be beneficial for each council person to appoint, you know, the 4 council members appoint 1 person, the mayor appointing 3, and that he would like to have a better ongoing relationship with the planning commissioners and be able to talk to them and have a dialogue with them. Is there any issue or implication with the city council members having an ongoing dialogue or meet and confer with planning commissioners in the event that something actually is appealed from the planning commission to the city council?
Well, it is certainly possible that allegations like that could be made. The Planning Commission is obligated to make its decisions based on the evidence before it, and to the extent that someone were to argue that in fact decisions were not being made based on evidence but rather direction from a member of the council who is obviously not on the Planning Commission and receiving evidence, and indeed who would be the person hearing an appeal of the issue, obviously allegations could be made. That's not to say that this would ever occur, but it does create at least an element of vulnerability to have that close working relationship.
Thank you. It's been no secret. I've voiced concerns before about the process, and I do agree that it needs maybe a little bit of tweaking for our council. And I'm just not sure that having like select seats it sounds like it would be a bit hard to implement or cumbersome to keep track of, especially when we're an at-large city council. That's something to think about. The interview process, I think my thought is that the entire city council needs to be more engaged in the interview and the selection of all commissioners. There was a little glitch with the last invitation to sit in on those, and I'm hoping that that's been worked out. So I agree that we need to change it, we need to tweak it. I'm not sure exactly what that would look like, aside from having them automatically scheduled for either the monthly workshop meeting that we don't usually have. That time is already blocked for us. Just make it that meeting would be interview meeting. Have it in a night where we don't have a very large agenda. I don't know what that is, or make it a special meeting. I don't know how you'd want to do that. It would have to be at a time where our planning commissioners could be here to be interviewed. So that's my thought. I do think we need to find a way to get the entire city council engaged. And if I remember correctly, I did abstain on the last vote for appointments because I wasn't able to interview anybody, and some of the people I really didn't know. And it's hard for me to say yes to something or someone when I don't know them. I'm not able to ask them any questions and get to know who they are, what their background is, and if this is the best fit for them. So that's why I abstained on that vote. So I agree, we need to tweak it. I'm just not sure what formula that will take, unless we just automatically do all interviews are council interviews.
One thing I would say is it would be a little scary for people to be interviewed by us up here in the dais, to interview people. I think you lose some of the people that might be good planning commissioners because it would scare them people are scared to come up and talk here half the time. So to be up here and be interviewed by a 5-member council would be scary. So I think that wouldn't be.
Well, could we do it in another format, like in the Morris Vance room where we have some of our workshops? And because it would still be public, but we'd all be kind of on the same level literally. Would maybe that's an option? If we did it on our, first Tuesday workshop day? I don't know.
If you do workshop, then there's a lot of people that work on the planning commission that works, because those meetings are at night, so it's hard to get there. They have to take off work in order to come in for, an interview. So, and it's whatever.
Well, that's why we need to figure out how to overcome some of the barriers so that we can.
And then the other thing is, getting all of us together at one time and getting all the council members picking a day and picking a time that's convenient for everybody to do that. And it'll be lengthy. I mean, if there's 30, it might take several days to interview. So just so you're all willing to do that. Okay, so I have Councilmember Campbell. Do you on there again?
Yes. So it sounds like there's a desire for some alterations, but we're not sure exactly what that is. So that brings me back to my suggestion that we work with staff. The city attorney, correct me, does the council have the ability, since it's not technically agendized, but this item is to create a subcommittee to work with staff to examine this issue and come back with the proposal?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Then if Councilmember Franklin would either withdraw his motion that was not seconded, or I can make a motion, so.
Don't you have to give staff direction of some kind?
I don't know which two members of the council are going to be chosen for the subcommittee. I don't. So in light of that, I think any two of us have the privilege, in accordance with the Brown Act, of meeting and discussing. I would certainly be willing to meet with any one member of the council to discuss the matter further. But this was my idea for how we could address some of the concerns. And there's some other thoughts I'm having that I think I'll just keep to myself right now. With regard to, I think if there's not a consensus to move, if three of us don't agree to move in a particular direction here, then this is a forum for ideas. If any member of the council has a better idea than mine today or in the future, then I'm certainly open to hearing it.
So I just want to make a suggestion, which is, and I'm going to go back to a comment that we made at the last meeting about not having a specifically written proposal that we reviewed beforehand. Mm-hmm. This one is one of those that there are a lot of logistical issues with what you're suggesting, and I think Councilman Rigby mentioned that as well. So this is something that even for you to, or for the council to consider it, it would need to be more thoroughly examined.
Well, that's why I was suggesting the staff would, the motion was to ask the staff to bring us something that was fully thought through.
Well, I think the staff aren't necessarily in a position, or they don't desire to necessarily get in the middle of a issue like this.
The staff did an excellent job drafting the animal sale prohibition ordinance. I commend them on that. They drafted something the majority of the council was able to support. So
I'm just going to suggest,
without much direction about the. I think they're equal to that task.
So I'm going to suggest something that leaves them out of it, and maybe the council can make some comments at the next meeting, because I think this is an issue that we do need to have brought back. Is I'm willing to work with you, not behind the scenes, but as a subcommittee with staff, to come back with a proposal that I feel that the entire council could get behind. What I don't want to see is each one of us going to staff saying, this is what my thoughts are, and this is what my thoughts are. And while we do have the ability with the Brown Act to individually speak to another member, this creates some structure to that. And this is your proposal that you're bringing forward, so I want you to have input in that process. Whether there's two alternatives that come back, working with the city attorney so that he can do some research with this issue, I think is an important process to vet this issue and bring it back, that we have something that this issue, to be honest, is a little bit more politicized for an internal process of the council and inner workings of the council than an ordinance might be. So,
are you proposing to appoint specific members of the council to the subcommittee?
I would support, yes. I don't think we want to have a whole discussion of appointments for a subcommittee. I think it's really a pretty simple issue that if you want to serve on it, come back in the next meeting or two meetings down the road, a month, 2 months from now, that's an issue that I'm willing to consider and look at. And I think that way we have council approval with our agenda placement policy of utilizing staff resource and time on this issue at a reasonable level.
Councilman, I think just in the interest of our mayor and deputy mayor, who don't seem to really be very excited about this idea, what would forming a subcommittee, what advantage would that give us over just the two of us having a meeting? I mean, you tell me.
Can I speak?
Yeah, please.
I've been on here waiting the whole time. So
He's waiting, but you're having a conversation, so go ahead, John.
I think it's a really bad idea to have two people sit on some subcommittee. It's not even on the agenda to do that, so I don't agree with that at all. And I think we should all be able to meet with staff. I mean, all five of us. If you guys want to talk to staff, I think we should all be able to address staff and frankly, that's what they get paid to do, is to meet with the council members and the mayor. So I think we should all have input in this, not just two people. In addition to that, I think that a way that we could easily get around this or fix this situation so that nobody's left out or feels like they're being left out is we do the 2-2-1 meetings all the time. Why can't we do 2-2-1 interviews? The mayor interviews, two of us interview, and two other people interview. Everybody gets to interview. We all put our input. We get to vote, and that way we don't have to necessarily agendize. It's an interview, and that makes people feel comfortable because they're going to go through an interview process. Corporations do it all the time. Sometimes you got to go through 5 or 6 interviews at a corporation, so I don't think it would be a big deal. Those interviews could all be done on the same day, or worst case scenario, maybe 2 days. But that way, we're not doing a whole staff presentation at a workshop. I think that would, that way we all get our say, and then we get to vote. Then the vote would be public. And when at that vote, we can then take the time to argue our positions or show our support for certain individuals. Does that make sense to you? You're the one that brought this up, so I'm just asking you. The making of a nomination is essential because if there are 40 people that run, we can't vote on them in order that they file their application. We have to select which ones we're going to vote on because if we did it in order, then the really good applicants, the last of the list, would make it. So the nomination process is obviously essential. And, in terms of them not being, I don't think would fatigue them at all to come before us for an interview. They're certainly going to sit right here on this dais and address the community, potentially hundreds of members of the community. So I don't think we have any shrinking wallflowers there. And I would note that you're talking about, say, 20 people apply for a planning commission, and we all got to sit here, and then we're going to have to do it anyways. But then the public's going to have to sit here and listen to Joe Smith, whatever, who wants to apply for planning commission, and he's going to have his 3 minutes. I don't even know what we would give him.
Quite frankly, I'll be the one bold enough to say you're illuminating the reasons why it is difficult for the entire council to participate in this process, and therefore you're illuminating the point that I'm trying to make, which is it is sort of difficult for the rest of the council to be involved in this process. And, I got to, because you guys brought it up, I just have to address this point. There's no greater risk of corruption or undue influence, under this proposal I'm making than under the current proposal. The fact is today an elected official makes an appointment. They can withhold that appointment in the future. There can be pressure brought to bear. There's no increased exposure to some sort of charge of corruption with changing which elected officials. I would disagree.
I just think you're wrong. I think if you are appointing, I don't appoint the planning commissioner. I suggest a person, and you all can put anybody else out there that you want to, and we can vote on it. But when you personally are picking someone, then that's cronyism, and you're picking your own person that you can talk to or whatever.
I was just suggesting that we would have that same exact power that you're currently entitled to, which is that we would propose someone, and then in like kind to which today the council could vote someone else. The power of making the nomination is a substantial power. And I think that you can acknowledge that it is a substantial power.
So you're trying to take the power away from the mayor? Is that what you're trying to?
It's not about diluting your power. It's about empowering the rest of the council. That's the reason for the proposal.
But it may become the turn of the new person that's on the council. You may not be there the next time your person comes up, and it might be a brand new person on the council. That
I would
have
be
that.
happy at this time to acknowledge.
Or just you. I'm talking anybody.
Right. I would, for my part, be willing to close the conversation by acknowledging that there's not majority support for motion in any one direction here. I think we have maybe found a point of disagreement on a few items, and I would encourage us all to have legal conversations with one another that we're allowed to under the Brown Act, and to convert and conversate with staff to bring, if any other member of the council has a better solution than what I proposed, I would look forward to hearing it at a future council meeting, and I would close my remarks on this subject.
Councilmember Rigby.
Thank you. As I said before, my issue was having an opportunity for the entire council to be more engaged in the process. And I think that if each individual council member were to appoint somebody, I can see that process. I'm not sure how that would work. You'd have to really come back with a strong plan on that. But I actually like Deputy Mayor Aguilera's suggestion because it addresses my concern, which is being more engaged, and addresses your concern, Madam Mayor, about people not perhaps wanting to be interviewed in this type of a forum. And so if the 221 interviews, that we always have our meetings 221 with anybody that we're meeting with on any topic, that seems to be it works for us, it works for the Brown Act, our city attorney likes that process. So I'm good with meeting on a 221 level, doing our 221s with all the interviews. And I understand the time commitment that takes, and I'm willing to put that in because that's kind of why we're here. So until we come up with a better structure or something that we can, physically look at, I'm good with 221s.
And then we each could bring forward someone, and if we have 5, then we bring 5.
It does give us an opportunity to have the input on all the people that we interview. And then my only closing comment on that is before we go on to public hearing the next item, can we take a 5-minute break?
Yeah, but Councilmember Campbell has something to say.
I'm just
first.
saying when we're done with the close of this. Yeah.
Yes, we can.
We've heard a lot of different ideas all over the place, and I think the basic message is there needs to be more of an involved process with every council member in the selection process. And I think, Madam Mayor, you brought up a good point about if we all have an interview with the candidates, we could each suggest that one particular candidate. I think the challenge we have right now is that certain people appear and we have no clue who the recommended appointment is. And that's, I think, the biggest hurdle to overcome. So what I'm going to suggest is to close this item out, and that way we can maybe come up with something concrete.
Can you take a break?
is I'm going to make a motion to direct staff to work with any council member who wants to talk with them about developing a proposal to bring back to the council, since what I was trying to do was come to a more coalesced proposal, but I don't think there would be a lot of duplicative research. What I would suggest is that the staff research what other cities in the region do with their process, not just the written process, but actually follow up with those cities and ask them, does your entire council participate in the interview, or is it 1 or 2 council members? I think that's something that staff could provide to the council, and then should any one of us wish to draft a proposal for modifications to our current policies and procedures, we could bring that back at a future council meeting. So that would be my motion, is to direct staff to provide research and information on other council procedures, policies, and the actual practice and implementation of those policies. If there may be a second for that motion.
I would vote with you, but I'm not going to second it, because if we don't have another second, then it would be pointless.
You're seconding the motion? Okay. Councilmember Rigby seconded the motion. That motion passes 4-1. And so now we're going to take a break, right? For like 5 minutes? 5 minutes good? Okay, just 5. Okay, we need to get back. Everybody get back so we can finish this meeting and go home tonight. Everybody? Yeah. It was a good conversation, though. Yeah. Okay, where is Patrick? There he is. Okay, Cody, take and roll here. Okay, we all ready? Next thing on our agenda is our public hearings. And so our first public hearing is a downtown specific plan update, including the general plan amendment and zone change for 751 East Vista Way and 951 to 987 Civic Center Drive. And our Director of Community Development and Engineering, John Conley, is going to introduce the item. And I am going to actually leave the room because I have a conflict of interest because of the location of my home. So I will be in the back room, which makes me crazy, but I'd love to be here, but I'll be out there.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll give her a sec. Mr. Conley?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and Council. This is the Downtown Specific Plan Update public hearing. This is a process that we've been working on for a couple years now. It's a request to update the document, which is the zoning code for the downtown area, including a parking management plan and a health impact analysis, which were prepared as part of the update. It also includes a general plan amendment and zone change for the properties that the mayor mentioned, 751 East Vista Way, which is the former Sycamore Creek Mobile Home Park, and 951 and 987 Civic Center Drive, which is about an acre of property on the west side of Civic Center Drive, west of the Sprinter Station. This is the project area shown on the overhead. This is the zoning map for the city, so that's what the various colors accommodate. The project area is about 270 acres right now. That's the current specific plan area. The two areas that are proposed to be added are shown here with the dots. One area is up in the upper right-hand corner here, which is the Sycamore Creek Mobile Home Park. That's approximately 13 acres, just behind the 99-cent store off of East Vista Way. The other property is approximately an acre just west of the Civic Center Drive Sprinter Station. The combination of those two properties is about 14 acres that would be added to the specific plan area. Overall, the specific plan covers the downtown area along Vista Village Drive and South Santa Fe down to about Monte Vista Drive. The process for this update was initiated under a smart growth incentive grant that we received from Sandag for $150,000. We received that at the beginning of last year. It established a project advisory committee, which was a 7-member panel of business and property owners that included the mayor, to make recommendations on updates to the plan and changes that could be considered by the council and the planning commission. We had 4 meetings of that group that started in May of last year and lasted through September. And we also established subgroups for the parking management plan and the health impact analysis, and there were 6 meetings of those subgroups. We came to the Planning Commission for a workshop in August of last year and February of this year, as well as workshops at the City Council in March and April of this year. Public notices were sent out for the April City Council workshop, as well as the public hearing at the Planning Commission that we held in August and this meeting tonight. The draft specific plan document was prepared earlier this year. It's been online since June and available to the public. We've received a couple of comments that are included in your packet on the document itself. There's a program environmental impact report that was prepared for this specific plan when it was adopted in 2010. The changes that are proposed generate no significant new environmental impacts, and so we prepared an addendum to that document, which is also part of your packet this evening. We held a public hearing at the Planning Commission in August, and we're here before you this evening. So the specific plan includes numerous districts. The current plan has 5. We're proposing 6 new districts to split up the plan into various planning areas. This accommodates the character of the individual areas, and so the 6 of them are grouped in accordance with the character of those commercial and residential areas that they're located in. They include the West Gateway, which is the area of the movie theater complex in the Vista Village Center. That's the brownish area on the left-hand side along Vista Village Drive. The Transit District, which includes the Vista Village Transit Center and the surrounding residential neighborhoods. The Historic Downtown, which speaks for itself. The Civic Center, which is the purple on the right, that includes the Civic Center and the surrounding commercial uses, as well as the proposed addition of the Sycamore Creek Mobile Home Park. Paseo Santa Fe, which is the yellow, what I call the spine of the specific plan that runs along the commercial corridor of Mercantile and South Santa Fe. And the South Gateway, which is a largely commercial with multifamily residential along Postal Way and South Santa Fe. The land use map is shown here. The land uses that were established in 2010 when the specific plan was adopted largely remain unchanged. They are mixed use, which allows for residential or commercial or both on a site. There are some specific designations that we've made in the interest of preserving city property. Those are in the blue. Those are designated civic activity, and those include the Civic Center, the Adobe, as well as publicly owned parking lots in the downtown area. And there's also open space and parks designations for both the existing parklands and future open space areas, which I'll touch on. The land use categories in the plan remain generally the same. There are some additions. As I mentioned, everything's mixed use. That doesn't change with the exception of the properties that are added to the plan that I mentioned earlier. Those also become a mixed use designation. The land use matrix that is included in the plan is Table 2-1. It includes land uses by category, and each of the districts are identified, and then the permit type or the allowed use that would be required for each of those uses is identified in the table. Some of the updated uses that are proposed include arts and cultural uses such as art schools or studios, some limited outdoor uses such as farmers markets and community gardens, an allowance for temporary buildings not to exceed 24 months, which would allow some vacant properties to be used in a temporary fashion with discretionary approval, the allowance for single-family dwellings, which is not currently in the plan, and the allowance for one tattoo establishment, which could occur in either the Transit, Historic Downtown, or Paseo Santa Fe districts per the Council's direction in April. The development standards are included in Table 3-1 of the plan. They generally remain the same with some changes noted here. Those include reducing the maximum building height in the South Gateway District, which is the area generally south of Civic Center Drive along South Santa Fe. This is the blue area shown in the upper right-hand corner of the slide. It's currently at a 4-story maximum building height, and there's a proposal to reduce that to 3 stories. The proposed changes also include increasing the maximum building height in the historic downtown, which is the area in the orange in the lower right-hand corner of the slide. This includes a historic downtown core area along Broadway, Main Street, Indiana. It's currently limited to 2 stories, and the proposal is to allow an increase up to 3 stories within this area, with the exception of the residential area south of Eucalyptus that was recommended to be kept at 2 stories by the Planning Commission, and I'll touch on that in a moment. There's also a proposal to modify some of the building setbacks to conform to existing development within those blocks, and those are determined at the time of a discretionary application. There are both regulations and guidelines included in the update. The regulations are intended to be requirements that apply to all new development. The guidelines are intended to be advisory to applicants to meet the requirements that the city would like to see. And of course, those are all reviewed at the discretionary level. There's also transitional guidance for new development proposals that are adjacent to lower level uses, such as 1 or 2 story homes, where step backs are required for higher level buildings along the front of the building to allow for a transitional development pattern. The architectural standards in the plan apply to all the planning districts. They have specific architectural standards for each of the districts that recognize the architecturally significant buildings and features within the district, and the guidelines address those features within each of the district categories. There's also an identification of potentially historic buildings that occur within the specific plan area, and to allow for preservation of those buildings are identified, and so the evaluation of their historic integrity occurs at the time of application based on what's listed in the plan. Some other categories that were addressed as part of the Project Advisory Committee and included in the plan are signage and public art. The signage generally follows a development code allowance with specific guidance for infill development patterns, and the plan significantly promotes public art within the plan area and proposes a public art fee. However, we will bring that back to the council at a future date. We're not going to bring that forward this evening because we still have to do quite a bit of research to bring that forward. Landscaping within the plan, although it is somewhat minimal compared to our citywide landscaping, follows the development code and the city's manual standards. As I mentioned, allows a slightly lower percentage because of the infill nature and the small lot sizes within the plan area. Open space requirements are identified for each development, 200 square feet per unit for residential and a percentage of the site for commercial. And there are designated public open space and park areas that are identified, which includes a future public park at the Magnet Middle School open space area that's just to the west of here, if the school district ever opens the site to public use or the site is redeveloped. One of the provisions of the plan was a parking management plan, which reviewed the parking standards within the downtown area, and there were a number of meetings discussing this topic. The parking management plan is attached to the specific plan as an appendix. It essentially establishes some residential standards that are slightly different from our citywide standards, also slightly different from our mixed-use standards, so really sit between the mixed-use and the citywide standards in an effort to try to provide adequate parking for multifamily but still accommodate some new development in these infill areas. The standards are listed here, 1.25 for a one-bedroom or studio per unit, 2.25 for a two-bedroom, 2.75 for a three-bedroom. The commercial standard throughout the plan is 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet, which is typical for a commercial retail type use. The community development director or the city planner, upon an application for new development, may require a higher standard if it's a use that requires a higher standard, but at the basic level, it's 4 per 1,000. There's also an allowance for shared parking or reductions with approval of the Planning Commission or on appeal of the City Council. This allows for individual developments that are looking for reduced parking opportunities to provide some information about why it's justified, and it would be at the discretionary level for the Planning Commission or Council to decide if it's appropriate. And finally, there's a recommendation for a parking district within the historic downtown district, which means anywhere within the district, a new commercial use can provide parking. It doesn't have to be on site, which would allow some new development to occur in the district, but while allowing parking on a more district-wide basis. This only applies to commercial development. It would not apply to residential. New residential development would have to provide their parking on site. There's a health impact analysis that was prepared as part of the plan. This was one of the requirements of the SANDAG grant. It evaluates the health impacts of the proposed revisions. There were many positive impacts associated with the smart growth and pedestrian-oriented development patterns that were recommended in the plan. There are some negative impacts associated with increased noise and traffic, which occurs with any dense area like the downtown. There's also a checklist that's included in the health impact analysis that can be used to evaluate new development for public health impacts. However, the staff is not recommending using that for all discretionary applications at this time. As I mentioned before, we did an addendum to the program environmental impact report that was prepared in 2010. It's included in the staff report for your information. It evaluates the proposed changes plus the addition of the 2 new areas that were mentioned. However, the future development of these properties would still be subject to project-specific environmental review, so at the program level, it doesn't identify any environmental impacts from changing the zoning, but if those properties are developed, obviously they go through additional review under the California Environmental Quality Act. And as I mentioned, there's no new significant environmental impacts identified at that program level. Excuse me. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the document on August 18, 2015, with the added condition to limit the building height within the historic downtown district for the area that is south of Eucalyptus along Ocean View and Park Avenue. I've shown that area in the red here of the slide to give you a specific idea of the area that would be limited to 2 stories. This was based on some of the concerns from the surrounding neighbors that 3-story development would significantly affect their views along Ocean View and the homes above. The staff has included this condition in the revisions that are presented to the council, so it is part of the staff recommendation. In closing, staff recommends approval of the specific plan and the associated land use changes. The council may approve as presented this evening, request modifications for inclusion in the final version, which we can either do from the dais or bring back at a later date. And that completes my staff presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conley. Very good job. Thank you to your staff as well. A lot of time and work has gone into that. Any comments or questions before we hear the public? All right. Looks like we have two speakers. Lev Gershman.
Don't look that scary.
Thank you. I feel better now.
Good evening, council members. My name is Lev Gershman. I'm a principal of Tideline Partners. We're an investment management firm, and we conduct our business in commercial real estate and residential real estate. I wanted to make a couple of general comments about the specific plan. I think it was a very challenging and lengthy process to go through. The challenges were we're dealing with finite resources and growing demand. The goal is really to provide affordable solutions while protecting the natural limited resources, finite resources that we have. I think the city of Vista is lucky to have the kind of staff that they have. There's a lot of thought and strategy that goes into putting these together. I think John Conley and his team really deserves a hand for putting together a comprehensive thoughtful plan that integrates a lot of different uses and creates what I believe will be a very vibrant place 20 years from now in a destination. As a developer, I could tell you that having a plan that removes some of the ambiguity is very helpful because you know what you can and can't do. So I think with the good market conditions that are available now and with some of the clarity that the plan provides, through the land use and development standards. While it's not perfect, it'll never be because it's not an ideal. I want to endorse it with my support. I will just provide one last point about my personal opinion. That is sort of the sustainability component. I wish there was more accommodation towards using the transit that's in place with the Sprinter. I wish there were some incentives to create more walkable communities and get people out of their car. But then again, it's a tough decision to make, so I think what the staff has put together along with the focus group is a very good specific plan.
Thank you. Sarah Lawyer?
Yes, lawyer. And no, you're not scary.
Appreciate it.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Sarah Lawyer, and I reside at 207 Ocean View Drive. My husband and I attended the April 28th City Council meeting when first notified of the pending changes to the Downtown Specific Plan, and then attended the August 18th Planning Commission meeting where I addressed most specifically the potential height increases affecting our neighborhood. I am pleased to see that the Planning Commission and the city staff involved in the planning process listened to concerns and added a footnote to the Downtown Specific Plan decreasing building heights for the streets of Park and Ocean View south of Eucalyptus back to the original 2 stories. I will be cautiously watching in the coming years to see what kind of proposed development is planned, as I am still concerned that proposed mass and setback guidelines still do not address the unique hillsides we have in our downtown, nor set requirements specific enough to protect existing single-family homes, especially where height, density, and parking are concerned. The in-lieu parking program proposed does bring a few questions to mind. Do the funds collected to finance public parking facilities or for use in parking improvement strategies mean that development can go forward before public parking improvements are completed, or must there be a plan for this alternative parking in place? And does this apply to both residential and commercial development, which may have been answered already? I know all too well, not only as a property owner here in Vista, but as an owner of rental property elsewhere, that parking, and especially in residential development, can have a major negative impact to surrounding areas if not planned and managed carefully. The value of my property and that of my neighbors, as well as the quality of our lives as development continues, is my focus going forward. As I stated in my comments to the Planning Commission, my main concern as infill development occurs is that it is done to respect the character and scale of the existing residential areas, so that those of us who live on the hills of downtown Vista can now and in the future enjoy not only a revitalized downtown, but can continue to enjoy the true meaning of the name of our city of Vista, namely the view. Thank you.
An ocean view, right? Okay, so all the speakers that we have this evening, so I'm open to hearing suggestions or comments from fellow council members. Okay, Council Member Rigby.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I have a lot of questions. So I did want to ask particularly on the map that you show, in fact, it's the one you have up here, where you show 100 Main Street and that lot in the transit district. Can you please remind me why it's not in the historic downtown district?
There was an extensive amount of discussion about that at the Project Advisory Committee group, and the decision was made to leave it in the transit area because it would allow for up to a 4-story development there, rather than limiting it to 2 or 3 stories in the historic downtown.
Even though it's actually in historic downtown. Okay. I'm not in favor of that one. But that was something that I brought up at the other meetings, was the height of the various areas. So I was glad to see that, the discussion was to reduce the height from that one area from 4 stories to 3 stories. But did I hear you say the increase in the historic downtown from 2 stories to 3 stories? I'm not in favor of increasing the height of any of the buildings downtown, but we had talked about that previously. And then one of the questions on one of my little tabs through here is regarding Magnet Middle School. It was referenced multiple times in here as a potential future community park. Has there been any discussion? Is there any reason for us to believe that that property is going to be on the market anytime soon?
No, we've had discussions with the school district. They have no intention of abandoning that site in the near future. However, we did inform them that we were planning to identify this as an open space recreational resource in the future, and they did not object to that.
Okay. Thank you. So most of my notes I just made in my book, but I did have a couple of questions that I wrote down, especially regarding the landscape requirements. A couple of them talked about whether it was 25% or 5%, whatever the landscape requirement percentage-wise for the footprint of the project. And some of the verbiage in here was about the landscaping requirement could be met with rooftop landscaping. Now, some of those were at 50% or 25% of the required landscape, but some of them were 100% of the required landscape requirement could be met by rooftop landscape. My concern with that is if all the beautification of the property and the landscaping required is on the roof, then what we're looking at as we're walking through there in our beautifully pedestrian-friendly area is concrete and development. Am I mistaken? Am I not reading that correctly?
I believe there's an allowance, and I'll check here, but I believe there was an allowance for use of the rooftop or above ground floor areas to accommodate some of the landscape allowance, but I don't know that it was 100%. The overall site percentage for a development is only 5% within the downtown specific plan, and that's really because of the infill nature of the plan. It's really hard to set aside a lot of area for landscaping. Citywide, it's 15%, so it's much lower than that. But my understanding was that it was the rooftop areas was only allowed to accommodate a percentage of that overall site requirement.
Well, the verbiage on it was, for some of them, it just said rooftop landscaping meets the requirement. It didn't quantify that, but in a couple of places it did. So I wasn't sure if that was an oversight or if that's how it was going to be. But that would be something that I would not want to see, that the required percentage of landscaping for a footprint all be above our heads.
No, and the staff would not support that either.
Okay, thank you. The consideration, and I'm going back to my notes here, the consideration should be given to temporary closures of Main Street in front of the movie theater to create a vehicle-free, pedestrian-only plaza. We already do that for occasional festivals and the public safety events, etc. This almost gave the feeling of that turning into something more permanent. Is that where that was going?
No, that's why we put the word temporary.
Well, I appreciate that. So we already do that. So
there are a number of things in the plan that acknowledge what are already being done. I think the intent of the advisory committee was to make sure that we continue to allow for it.
Okay. And then in the mixed-use areas, it says the mixed-use designation allows for residential densities up to 40 units per gross acre. Can you remind me? I did drag out my old plan and was looking through it, but can you remind me what is it currently? Is it 40 units per acre currently?
Yes.
Okay. And let's see. I do recall at a couple of the workshops that we've had, I think with the council and with the planning commission, and some comments that we've received from the community, especially with a couple of the developments that we've had in the last couple of years, was about the architecture and the design. And some of the comments made that really stuck out were about going with the Adobe Mediterranean kind of look, almost too far with it. But in the design and the guidelines throughout this document, new development should reflect the design of the historic adobes found in Vista. That line is repeated through the document, intimating to me that the city is asking for the guidelines to continue, that we heavily influence new development to resemble the adobe. So I wasn't sure how that marries up with the community comments and comments at the workshops. Will we be having variations and doing different things? Because I know a lot of people were like, the Adobe influence is good, and then that's the historic, Vista. But we don't need the entire city to look like a great big giant Adobe.
I agree. The guidelines are intended to provide guidance, so they're not absolutely required. And as you read through the document, you'll note there are architectural guidelines for each district. Mm-hmm. And within each district, there are specific recommendations or identified themes that were looked for based on what's within those districts.
Right.
So in certain areas like the historic downtown, the bank building being the primary example of sort of the main historic structure down there, yes, we'd like to see examples of architectural features that reference or are similar to that. That doesn't mean that every development down there is going to have that look. This wasn't intended to create a theme for the downtown, just to provide guidance that an extremely contemporary glass and steel structure, for example, might not be the right idea to put in the historic downtown. You should be looking at the buildings around the district to try to come up with a theme for your architectural look.
Okay. It was referenced in different parts and different districts. It was a repeated theme, which is why it brought concern for me, because we've had that discussion with the community. So also in regulations on massing and setbacks, which I had a concern on the setbacks, and we've talked about this before. I think they're not adequate. I think the setbacks need to be more, and we had a conversation about one of the recent developments that the setback was 15 feet. And I see that on table 3-1, some of the setbacks here are only 10 feet. Most of them are 10 feet, some are 15 feet. So I'm not sure I want to see it get lower, but I understand some of the parcels that we're dealing with are smaller and infill properties. So some of those can although they're on a table here, are those things that we can also pull out individually depending on the lot size, the layout, how it's situated, the topography, the gross acreage, et cetera, so that we're not just automatically saying you only have to have a 10-foot setback?
Yes, the setbacks were intended to try to accommodate some of the smaller lot sizes and the infill nature of development that occurs in this area. But if you'll note, footnote number 2 on that table says setbacks may be adjusted at the discretion of the community development director to conform to existing buildings on the same block, so that we will try to recognize the setbacks of other buildings within that same block before we allow something to sit right up on the street if it's not already that way on the block.
Okay. And let's see. Oh, going back to the regulations on the footprint for the, I guess, non-residential development, one of the areas was the roof deck. All the open space can be on the roof deck. So the other thing was with the lighting, it had a statement that each characteristic of the district's characteristics should be taken into account for their particular lighting, but it had to kind of all have the same theme. So that stuck out. So I want to see how that works out. Everybody can be different, but you all got to be the same. So I'm going to
The idea
wait
is
to
that
see how
in the
that
public right-of-way, you would
out.
have lighting that mimicked the other streets, but on
Right.
the project itself, you could have some individual characteristics.
Okay. And the City of Vista and the Unified School District will explore joint use and improvement of VUSD's existing recreational facilities for the community. Now, I know in the past there's been discussion, not a lot of cooperation between the city and the school district, or with the school district and the community using some of the fields. And I know that the fields at Magnet Middle School is something that is in this document repeatedly. I just hope that does come to fruition, that we are able to work with the school district to open up some of the use of their fields. So I know this is in here as a guideline, but I'd really like to see that really worked on heavily with the school district. My comment on the parklets is what I've been talking about for years and years. I think that's a great idea, to use some of the empty space that you can't use it for anything else and build it into an urban park. We've talked about that. We have some great ideas on that. So I really applaud that effort. And most of my comments continue to go back to the height of it. I won't bore you with all of these. Confirmed housing on the opposite corner from 100 Main Street, when you go across Vista Village, there's a dirt lot right there. Do we know what is on the table for that in the future?
Nothing's proposed on that lot at this time.
Okay.
It's within the transit district, so it could be up to 4 stories.
Okay. Well, my comments on this are, I think 4 stories anywhere in the downtown area is too much. I think 3 stories in historic downtown is too much. And I think when we come to street corners, which is why I asked about the confirmed housing corner, I think when we come to street corners on major intersections like that, I would not want to see them built out, 10-foot setback and 4 stories high. I don't like the look of that in this city. I think that takes away from the visual and the aesthetic and the charm of the city to have a building that high right on the edge. So that would be something I would be very concerned about. So I still have the same concerns I've always had, that I've always voiced. To flip the switch, though, there are so many really great ideas in this general plan that really do bring out the vision that I think we all have for downtown, and that is to make it very pedestrian friendly, to make it alive again like we've been doing in the historic downtown. Like the mayor said once, you could roll a bowling ball down the street because there was nobody there, and now it's just really lively, and I look forward to having that spill out down through the whole entire corridor. I would just keep a really close eye on a couple of the details, because I think the details are what matters, and the details are what's going to make or break the look of the downtown and what we see in 20 years and how we feel about it. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Rigby, for being so thorough. Good job. Councilman Campbell.
Thank you. First, I want to thank staff for this lengthy process and the community involvement that we've had up to this point. I think this plan strikes a good balance and a compromise between unmitigated development and stagnation, which we've seen downtown under the current plan for decades. You can't have both. The existing development guidelines and building standards and zoning and growth and vibrancy in our downtown. So I'm very supportive of this plan for the balance that it strikes. Councilwoman Rigby mentioned the height changes in the buildings. Well, the reality is that if we don't allow those additional height guidelines in certain zones of the specific plan, specifically the 100 Main site, I'm afraid that we're going to see that be a dirt lot for many years to come. And that would be at great detriment to the city. And the entire community and the council should understand, I would hope, that a developer is not going to build a 2-story building on a site where it doesn't pencil out for them to build that building, unless the city wants to kick in money to a private entity, which we're not going to do. And that's the challenge. So I'm supportive of raising the building heights standards. I think that's going to allow for some additional development downtown and allow for new development to come in that's going to economically revitalize Vista's downtown. You know, when you go to other cities just in North County and you look at their downtowns and you look at the development that they've had over the past 10 to 15 years, Vista's remained relatively behind the times. And that's hurt us as a city for tourism. It's hurt us economically for our general fund budget, for the sales tax revenue. And I don't want to see us stick our head in the sand and say, we like it the way it is, let's not mess with some general underlying principles of our development for downtown. In 10 years from now, whether it's the same council or a different council, look back and go, wow, they lacked a vision for the development of Vista's future for our downtown. If you look at the Paseo Point project that we were all at this morning for the ribbon cutting at that project, that's higher than 3 stories, but it's a great example of a mixed-use, affordable housing and commercial all on the same site with adequate parking, with minimal setbacks, but the architectural design contributes greatly to that area. If you look before that building was put in, what was there but abandoned buildings that weren't changing and they weren't going to change. So I give great thanks to staff for their vision and work to bringing new development and vibrancy to our downtown specific plan, especially the Paseo Santa Fe corridor. I look forward to seeing more projects develop through there, and I look forward to seeing the 100 Main site develop to its full potential. So with that, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the downtown specific plan, including general plan amendment and zone changes as recommended by staff.
Thank you, Councilman Campbell. Any comments, Mr. Franklin?
You know, I had most of my questions answered by staff in our discussions, but you know, I agree it's important to preserve as many options as possible for developers so that we can continue to consider good projects downtown. And I'm aware that most of these projects would still come back and we'd have input. So I think it's a good product, and I would second the motion to approve it.
Okay. Before I take it to a vote, I do have one question for Councilwoman Rigby. You mentioned in just your questions that you had a concern with, I don't know what we call north of Vista Village, right? That you had a concern about that, that you think it should be in the historic district, I guess? And I was just wondering, is that because you think there's something historical there, or do you think, is it just mostly because of the height thing, height limit?
It's mostly because of the height thing, and I think you're taking a piece of property that's obviously here and you're identifying it to go over here in across the street. And I think I'm not a big fan of the 4-story buildings anywhere in the downtown area, but I understand that development will come through. I just don't think we need to go high rise. But I think that particular spot, the character of it is historic downtown, and I think it needs to remain a part of historic downtown. And I think if you take just a piece of it and you rip it out and you develop it differently than the rest of historic downtown, it's going to look odd. Is how I'm not seeing anything good coming out of that. So I think we need to be very, very careful with taking that piece of property that's obviously physically situated in this district and turning it into something in another district that doesn't fit with where it's actually physically situated. Okay. So that's my concern with that.
Yeah, because I think, you have is it 4 lanes or 6 lanes to divide? How wide is 4 lanes, Vista Village? I'm sorry. It's just, I just don't see that being connected, you know what I mean? Because what we're trying to do, as you know, is build a walkable downtown. And I think our historic, as it's laid out here in the plan, that's a walkable area. Cars are going to be slowed down to 20 miles, 25 miles an hour. Obviously, the project that we did not the groundbreaking, but the ribbon cutting today for, you can see the roads are narrowed down so that people will slow their vehicles down. And I just don't see people walking across Vista Village, and it is right next door, but it's going to be difficult, I think, I see that more residential, multi-family or something like that in that area. Maybe some mixed use, but I think it's probably going to end up being more just residential, multi-family in that area. So I just wondering if there was anything historical, because I want to preserve anything that's historical, but there really isn't anything there right now. That's, I would think, considered historical, right? Is there?
Nothing there that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right. Looks like we have a motion.
Deputy Mayor,
a second. Yeah, no, that's right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to clarify the conversations and the relationship with the Vista Unified School District that we've had. We've had ongoing talks with them, and we have a good relationship and open communication. At this time, they are not willing to open their campuses to the public during non-school hours, with the exception of authorized sports leagues that utilize their fields quite frequently for team play. And I, too, before you end up closing the public hearing, I wanted to say thank you to Mr. Conley and Mrs. Chow that's in the back for all their hard work, as well as their staff over the last 2 years. They've done a great job.
Did you make a motion to close the public hearing?
And clarify that my motion included closing the public hearing.
Okay, let's vote.
Just one quick question before I cast my vote. To clarify what Councilman Franklin asked, because I do have those particular concerns, like 99% of this I agree with. I don't agree with part of it. But those particular projects will come to us individually that we'll have an opportunity to voice opinion on and tweak details, correct?
Correct. Some of these are approved at the zoning administrator level, some are at the planning commission level. All of those decisions are appealable to the city council. I'll make sure you're all very aware of those timeframes when they come forward.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for all the work you've done on this. Good job.
I think we got to do it again. Please vote again. That passes unanimously with Mayor Ritter abstaining and out of the room. Thank you. Congratulations, Mr. Conley.
Thank you. Just one note of clarification. There is an allowance for a tattoo establishment in the plan because there's only one, and there are quite a few individual business owners who are quite interested in that opportunity. we'll be bringing back an item at the next meeting, hopefully, for the council to discuss how we intend to select that individual. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, I am back. So the next thing on our agenda is the development code amendments associated with the adopted housing element 2013 through 2021 and state law. Director of Community Development and Engineering, John Conley, will introduce the item.
Thank you. I'm losing my microphone here. Sorry. Patsy Chow, our city planner, is going to present this item. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Ritter, council members, Patsy Chow, City Planner, Community Development Department. The item before you tonight is a request for amendments to the development code, and they're required per state law, and which would allow the following as part of our code. The farm worker housing would be allowed in the E1 zone, employee housing in all of the residential zones, and supportive housing as a residential use in all zones where residential use is currently permitted. The reason why we're doing these code amendments is basically twofold: to ensure compliance with the adopted housing element, cycle 2013-2021, as well as make sure that we're in compliance with the state law. Just wanted to pointing out at this time that farm worker housing and supportive housing are currently existing in our development code in certain zones. So it's not completely new in certain parts of our code. As far as farm worker housing is concerned, under state law, farm worker housing is defined as up to 12 units or 36 beds that would be treated just the same as any other agricultural use. Agricultural uses are currently allowed in 3 of our zones, in the A1, E1, and R1 zones. And farm worker housing is currently allowed in the A1 zone. So this particular request would allow for permitting farm worker housing in the E1 zone. And at the same time, we would be removing all of the agricultural uses from the R1 zone, and therefore farm worker housing would not be allowed in the R1 zone. As far as existing agricultural uses in the R1 zone, they would remain as they are, so they'd be grandfathered in. In terms of employee housing, per the State Employee Housing Act, the definition of an employee housing is for 6 or fewer employees that will be treated as any other residential use. So, for instance, 6 or fewer individuals that are renting a house together, the employee housing would be treated no differently than that. The state mandate has been in place since the late 60s, so it's been a long time. But it does need to be clarified in our development code because the State Department of Housing and Community Development Department has been focusing on employee housing as well as farm worker housing more recently, and so therefore it's something that needs to be addressed in our code to be clarified. So with that, the request would be that the various residential zones would then be modified to allow employee housing as required by the state law. Supportive housing, as part of the housing element that was adopted in 2013, the city identified several programs that would address housing needs throughout the city per state law, and that includes housing for persons with special needs and disabilities. So supportive housing would be considered residential use and permitted by right, where residential uses are currently permitted, and they would also be subject to same development standards or treated the same as any other residential use. There's no limit on the length of stay for supportive housing. It would be linked to, or could be linked to, on-site as well as off-site services, and serving a particular or target population. The target population for supportive housing would be comprised of persons with special needs and disabilities, as well as homeless families and homeless youth. So they could all benefit from social service programs ranging from job training to improving health and life skills. In this particular request, then all of the residential zones, the various residential zones, would be modified to allow supportive housing as required by state law, and it would be considered a residential use, and again, subject to same standards or restrictions as any other residential use in the same zone. With that, the staff's recommendation is to for the adoption of an ordinance that would amend chapters as listed on the slide from 1802 all the way to 1835 as listed of our development code regarding farm worker, employee, and supportive housing that would help ensure compliance with the adopted housing element as well as state law. And this concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Councilmember Campbell.
Thank you to staff for keeping us in compliance with state law and our adopted housing element. I think these are changes that are, first off, required, but they're good changes and cleans up our development code. With that, I would make a motion to close the public hearing and adopt the development code amendments associated with the adopted housing element 2013 through 2021 in state law.
Do I have a second? Or
I can second it.
okay. Councilmember Rigby?
I'll second it. I thought so.
Do you want to talk, Councilmember Rigby? Do you have something? Okay.
Thank you. No, I wouldn't second that. Thank you very much for your presentation and the information. My only point is the same point I make every single time, that we are mandated by the state to codify the state law. And if we don't, they hold funding. There are strings attached to this. It's the state law. Everybody's got to do it. We shouldn't have funding that we are owed and should get be tied to whether or not we reiterate and embrace what the state does. That just annoys me and it frustrates me. So that's just my comment. I wanted it on the record. Thank you.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Everybody, please cast your votes. Oh, where did it go? Oh, okay. Motion passes with one no vote. Okay, the next thing on our agenda are we have, we have our speakers here. We have oral communications. Each speaker is given 3 minutes to speak on matters that are not on our agenda. So we have 3 speakers. Our first one is Peter, is it Lusby?
Good evening.
Good
I'd like
evening.
to say thank you to Mr. Connolly too for all the interface I've had with him over the years. I wanted to address actually Councilmember Rigby talked about what we will see in 20 years downtown. I want to address what you're seeing in almost 20 years in North County Square, a specific plan. The issue we have with things like this is that the conditions that the Planning Commission and the Council puts on the applicant before they make a negative declaration somehow don't get transferred from employee to employee as the employee turnover, and after a while things start to disintegrate. If you want to see what downtown is going to look like in 20 years' time, come and take a look at North County Square. Come and take a look at the landscaping in Planning Area 4 particularly, where they cut down massive amounts of trees. Take a look at the trees that were cut down all along the east side of Sycamore Avenue, where they cut down every tree in front of all the buildings there. Now, they're in trouble with the zoning enforcement right now over that, the east side, but our side of it, where I back right onto that piece of property there. And I have, it looks like my neighbor refers to it as the Mothership Landing. I wish I was aware I could display a few of the photographs I've taken from my windows that show you what it's like there at night. Now they've cut down all these trees. We have a big issue with that going on. We have a big issue also with them failing to maintain. There's a pond area that's supposed to be a pond area. It's silted up. It's overgrown with arundo. And if you don't know what arundo is, you should look it up. It's a very nasty invasive foreign plant. You find it all along the creeks, all through the county. And we get very, very concerned every winter about the flooding that's likely to occur because of that. These are the things that you're going to be seeing coming up, and this is a result of a couple of things that were mentioned by other council members this evening. Mr. Aguilera said, how do we even enforce some of this stuff? The question is, how do you enforce things that are going on when nobody seems to know that there's anything going on there? How do you deal with the fact that the sheriffs don't seem to know that it's not okay for those developments to cut down trees? They don't know because nobody tells them. And so when they call out the sheriffs because we've got a tree trimming company that comes in and cutting down trees that we know shouldn't be cut, they say, well, where's your backup for that? Well, how do you prove that? We as individuals can't deal with it. The city can't deal with it. You've got to be very careful to understand that these conditions that you put on things here are very, very frequently unenforceable, and that's what we're trying to deal with where we live right now, with the owners of the very properties behind us who are being less than cooperative at the best of times, and frankly riding roughshod over our rights and our environment the rest of the time. So I would like you to bear in mind, as you're making these conditions, that they may not be enforceable, and you may be dealing with an instant slum in the downtown, like you've created for us in our end of the town.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Charles Stephen Wells.
Thank you for listening to me. I'm going to tag on the end of Peter. Peter had a great statement there. Back on April 1st, 2014, there was a planning commission here. We attended a public hearing for North County Square. They wanted to have a bunch of LED light signs and displays and all this kind of stuff. We gave our opinions, also discussed matters of the landscape and the creek matters. This is back in April 1st, 2014. At that point in time, Chairman Kramer asked Patsy Chow who was responsible to maintain the aforementioned creek. Mrs. Chow responded that North County Square is the one among others responsible for the creek bed maintenance. We then had a gathering out on the site with Patsy Chow, the property management company, all these people. The property management person had said, "Oh, I don't think that's my situation, that I have to take care of any of this," upon Patsy Chow pointing out to him through paperwork and that he was indeed in control of those properties. Then he got back to us and let us know that it was going to cost him $40,000 to take care of that Arunda problem. And it was like, well, you've been there for 20 years, that pencils into $2,000 a year. I don't think that's too big a deal. But meanwhile, they've put her in the back burner, and us too, and now that we're going to have a bumper crop year for rain, it's going to be flooding properties down on Robolini and El Valle Opulento. Peter's going to be part of it, I'm going to be part of it, and all the people down on Robolini will be part of it. And it's like it's a hot potato. Every time we go down to code enforcement, they throw it over to environmental. Environmental throws it back to, and poor Patsy can't seem to have anything to help us enforce it. I know she's doing a lot of other things too, but they keep asking for building permits up there and for different people to go in. You just say, well, you're going to have to do this before we can do that. I mean, what else? It's the golden rule. You guys have the gold. You just have to roll with it. It's just hard to think that this Dan Francis just keeps putting Patsy Chow off because he's nobody. Compared to what you guys are, to tell them that they have to abide by the specific plan that they agreed to on the outset of this project, cutting down the trees and carrying on. They have slowed down the homeless people and the drugs and the prostitution and all that was going on down in our park. It seems to have slowed down. But when they went through to clean up
Did you wrap up?
Yeah, when they went through to clean the area up, they cut everything down. Rather than trim the trees up, they just cut them all down. And then all the light comes and the noise comes into our properties. But thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Looks like Kimmy Wells.
Nervous.
Don't be nervous.
I know it's when I sit down, I'm fine. If I stand up, I'm a nervous wreck. So, anyways, I'll try. Again, I'm here regarding North County Square, as well as my husband and Peter. Again, I'm going to reiterate mostly of what they said. It's been 15 years since that specific plan was put into effect. It's a full-time job for us to try to keep things enforced with planning, with the city attorney. I mean, I could do this all day, every day. We are adjacent to the Lube Express that was approved. They're across from 7-Eleven. We adamantly fought this being adjacent to residential property. And in the 15 years it's been there, it's proven that this was just a horrible thing to put in there. Our lives are affected daily by the nuisance that goes on there. They run air impact tools. They work on cars. They're not supposed to be doing any kind of automotive repair. It goes on constantly. I listen to, cars revving, engines. It's a total noise nuisance. They have never, ever done any of the landscaping they were required. So I look at the bays. There's a wall. Any of the vegetation is dead. It's just completely dead. They're renting U-Hauls. So those are returned all hours of the night. We hear the doors going up and down all night long. They, at one point, liked to use the ramps as a skateboard ramp. They were riding that up and down. Nothing is ever done. Again, we brought all this again April 1st of last year. The council asked Patsy Chow to put together something and get back to them. The Planning Commission. Nothing has been done. We went out, we walked the property with them, we gave them everything they asked for. Nothing has been done. I write emails, I contact code enforcement, I send them pictures. I get no response to my emails, nothing. Nobody gets back. It's just been put in. It's just a horrific nuisance. They talk about the vegetation in the open space, 24 trees in the summer of 13. They cut down for no reason. They claim it was for safety because the police couldn't see all the vagrants down there. Well, you don't cut a tree down. You cut it up so you can see underneath it. Now there's just, it's a mess. If you ever drive by there, peek down there. It's horrific. All the lighting now comes into our homes. Now, in June of this year, the development over at Panda Express, 44 trees. They decided they didn't want them. They just cut them down. 15 years later, all those lights. The noise is horrific now. It bounces off the buildings, comes into our homes. We all know it's hot. We can't have our windows open. We can't. We can't sleep if we do. So, it's just, we want to bring these things into compliance. Who do we go to? Who do we ask for? That's why we're here. We figure you guys are the ultimate governing body of all these people that work for the city, and we are asking you to please help us do something. We've been to the city attorney. We've been to code enforcement. We write, we ask, we beg. Nobody will do anything. The impending El Nino coming, the Arundo, we are going to be flooded. Who's going to be liable for that? Because they refuse to maintain the property there. So, I'm just asking if you will please help us with this problem or give us some guidance. Where do we go? I have put some documentation together if any of you are interested in it. Just in my notes and just some simple things out of the specific plan. If you want to look at it, it'll give you, so you don't have to go through the big books, but it'll give you some guidelines of what we're talking about.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, it's not agendized, so we really can't discuss it, right? Right, okay. So we're not agendized, so we can't discuss it, but I hate to put you off again, but we heard you. How's that? Okay. Okay, so moving on. The next thing on our, we have reports from members of the governing bodies on outside committee meetings. So do I want to go down the line and see? John, do you have anything? Deputy Mayor? Councilman Campbell? Councilman Franklin? Councilman Rigby?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Last Friday, I attended the Sandag Public Safety Committee meeting, and we talked about the regional crime statistics for January to June of this year, and they were very interesting. The most notable part was that, there were some decrease in particular crimes, but an increase in larceny and some other issues. So that was something to keep an eye out. There was some speculation and discussion as to what might be causing that. But anyway, it was a very interesting discussion, and perhaps some more discussion might be coming up before us regarding that. So I just wanted to let you know about that meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to, as long as you're there, do you want to go ahead and start with your comments?
Sure, thank you. My comments are, we come to the close of the Moonlight summer season. I saw all the shows, and I think on my Facebook page, every single show, I said this was the best show ever. You must see a show, go see it, and it really is true. There's never a bad show, and I enjoyed the summer season very, very much. So that's pretty much all of my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Franklin? I don't have any remarks. Councilmember Campbell?
I just wanted to inform the council that this coming week, Saturday through next Wednesday, I'm going to be traveling with the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce to their One Region, One Voice San Diego mission to Washington, D.C. And so I'll be traveling with other elected and business leaders throughout the county with numerous meetings with representatives in D.C. to put Vista more on the map.
Good. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, actually, I did forget to report on my meeting with NCTD. So overall, ridership in the entire region, including down south, MTS, NCTD, Orange County, overall ridership is actually down slightly. They're trying to figure out why that is. They think it's because of the improvement of the economy, possibly. So people buying cars, that is on the up, right? So, however, our Sprinter, the ridership is actually improved considerably, and we're at really record levels for the Sprinter, really at projected levels, the revised projected levels for the Sprinter, we've actually surpassed. So that's good news for the Sprinter.
Very good. I have some announcements here. The Moonlight's final summer production of Big Fish ends this Saturday. Tickets are still available, and so there's more information available at moonlightstage.com if you're interested in that. If you haven't seen it, it's a great show. So if anybody hasn't been, it's winding down the season here. National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day is this Saturday, September 26th, and the Vista Sheriff's deputies will be at the Walgreens parking lot at 310 Sycamore from 10 to 2 collecting unwanted or expired prescription drugs. And so more locations can be found online at www.dea.gov, and the service is free and anonymous, and you can take any pills or anything you have, prescriptions, and they'll take care of them for you. Congratulations to the Vista Library. It's celebrating 100 years of service this Saturday, September 26th, with a community celebration, which includes musical performances, classic cars, food, and more. It runs from 1 to 4, and it's free and open to the public. And one last thing, we have free financial planning consultations are available on Wednesday, September 30th at the Gloria McClellan Adult Activity and Resource Center. So if you need help planning in financial planning, you can call our deputy mayor. Aren't you a financial planner? Yes. Or
yes, I am. Yeah, but
yes, or go to the Gloria McClellan Adult Activity Resource Center.
I won't be there, though.
You won't be there. Okay, so reserve an appointment at the center, 760-639-6162. So those are kind of the announcements. And then I attended 3 meetings last week, which the Sandag Transportation meeting last Friday. I attended that, and they're talking about quality of life, putting a quality of life initiative on the ballot for next year, which is just kind of talking, nothing yet. We had Innovate 78, our mayor's meeting this morning, and that should come before our council, with an update on that in the next meeting. Do we decide the next one? A meeting probably in October.
Either there'll be the next meeting or the first meeting in November.
Yeah, next meeting in October, first meeting in November. They'll give you an update because there's lots of good things that are going on with that. And then also I attended Encina, the meeting last week, and then I have another one tomorrow. So those are the meetings that I've been attending. So with that, I'll turn it over to our city manager, Patrick Johnson, for announcements.
I have a few. As part of the process of completing the Paseo Santa Fe upgrade, this Saturday we will be switching over and focusing on the east side of the street, which includes the streetscape improvements to the street, the sidewalks, and the street lights. And so as part of doing that, we will only have traffic going southbound. And so traffic can go southbound on Paseo Santa Fe, and those that wish to go northbound or get to the north side will be detoured around Ocean View. So that'll take place for probably the next 2 to 3 months until the project is substantially complete. So I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. We also have a new interactive map that provides an overview of large planning projects within the city. And so that has just been released. It's been a great effort by our community development department as well as our IT department with GIS. And so that is available for the public. So the public can go to our website at cityofvista.com and look at the construction projects link. And you can view the map and you can see the status and the contact person in the city and get more information on all the development that's going on. And at the last meeting, I reported that we were in the process of refinancing our certificates of participation, which are Prop L bonds. And I'm happy to say that on September 15th, we closed and had a net savings of about, or an annual savings of about $1 million a year with the Prop L bonds, which means that the money that we generate from the Prop L sales tax transactions will be able to fund the life of the bonds as well as the additional $1.2 million per year for firefighter salaries. So that's great news, and the bonds will be well taken care of through 2037. Thank you.
Fantastic. That's great news. Our city attorney, do you have anything?
Thank you, Mayor, and nothing this evening.
Okay, how about our assistant city clerk? No, Amanda. How about Kathy, our soon-to-be city clerk? Nothing tonight? Okay. With that, we're adjourned. Time is at 8:45. Ooh.